For thousands of years, humanity has shaped stone, earth, and time itself, yet some creations still resist every attempt to explain them. Scattered across deserts, mountains, and forgotten valleys are structures so precise, so advanced, that even modern technology struggles to replicate what ancient hands achieved. How were they built, and why? In this 3-hour journey, we'll explore archaeological mysteries that challenge engineering, logic, and history itself. From massive stoneworks to enigmatic ruins etched with purpose, each discovery raises uncomfortable questions. Stay with us as we step beyond accepted explanations and into the unanswered depths of our ancient past. Rising quietly from the flat, arid plains of northern Peru, the Túcume Pyramids stretch across the landscape like a ghostly city frozen in time. From a distance, they appear as soft humps of earth, weathered and muted by centuries of wind and sun. But as you approach, the scale becomes undeniable. Dozens of adobe structures, some reaching heights of 20 meters, spread across more than 2 square kilometers, forming a sprawling ceremonial complex. Their earthen walls, composed of sun-dried bricks, bear the faint traces of ancient hands, lines and impressions that hint at careful construction techniques lost to history. The landscape itself seems to hold its breath, a quiet stage for stories long forgotten. Archaeologists have dated the site to the Lambayeque culture, flourishing between the 12th and 15th centuries. Excavations reveal a complex society, deeply connected to agriculture, religion, and elaborate funerary practices. Tombs, often hidden within pyramid platforms, contain gold ornaments, pottery, and human remains that speak to rituals of hierarchy, devotion, and reverence for the afterlife. Yet, even with decades of study, certain aspects of Túcume remain elusive. Why was this particular location chosen, stretching across flat desert plains rather than elevated hillsides common to other Andean pyramids? How did the builders coordinate such monumental constructions without the apparent use of advanced tools or written records? Walking among the pyramids, one notices a rhythm in their layout. Some researchers suggest astronomical alignments, observing that specific platforms line up with solstices or lunar cycles. Could the Lambayeque have used the sun, the moon, and the stars as guides for both time and ceremony? Evidence hints at careful planning, but the precise methods are lost. No stone inscriptions or codices survive to illuminate the intentions behind these designs. And yet, the more one studies the site, the more it seems almost deliberately enigmatic, as if some knowledge was meant to fade alongside the rising and setting sun over the Pampas de Túcume. Adding to the intrigue are the sheer scale and speed implied by construction. Adobe, though abundant, is fragile compared to stone. To create hundreds of platforms and monumental structures, the builders would have needed sophisticated organizational systems, labor forces, supply chains, and knowledge of structural engineering that modern calculations still struggle to replicate fully. Some scholars propose incremental construction over centuries, a community effort evolving through generations. Others point to subtle hydraulic systems, canals and reservoirs woven throughout the complex that suggest an understanding of irrigation and water management far beyond the simple survival of desert agriculture. And yet, no written manuals, blueprints, or direct records survive to tell us how this knowledge was transmitted. There are whispers, too, that certain chambers within the pyramids defy conventional explanation. Some tombs and ceremonial spaces appear unusually large or perfectly proportioned, sparking speculation about lost techniques or purposes unknown to us. Was every platform purely functional, ritual, administrative, or funerary? Or did some carry symbolic meaning, encoded in size, orientation, or sequence? Even today, local legends tell of secret tunnels and hidden chambers, stories passed orally through generations, hinting at secrets yet to be unearthed. The Túcume Pyramids endure as a site of both fascination and frustration. Archaeology provides fragments, artifacts, structural measurements, and contextual clues. Yet every answer seems to raise new questions. How did the Lambayekwe conceptualize such a vast ceremonial city in the desert? Why have so many details faded, leaving us with a landscape of silent mounds and scattered bricks? And what, if anything, remains hidden beneath the surface, waiting to rewrite our understanding of this remarkable culture? Standing among the pyramids as the sun dips low, casting long shadows across adobe walls, it is impossible not to feel the weight of time pressing gently yet insistently. Here lies human ambition and ingenuity, intertwined with mystery. And though centuries have passed, the Túcume Pyramids continue to whisper their questions to anyone willing to listen. What did the builders know that we do not? And how much of their wisdom remains buried, awaiting discovery? Beyond the arid highlands of Zacatecas, Mexico, a solitary silhouette rises against the horizon: La Quemada Citadel. From a distance, it appears as a series of rugged terraces carved directly into the rocky hill, the earth itself shaped into walls, staircases, and plazas. The wind scours the exposed slopes, carrying dust that swirls around the remnants of stone platforms, as though the hill is exhaling centuries of secrets. Up close, the citadel reveals a more deliberate design: towering walls of volcanic stone, narrow corridors, and an expansive plaza that could have hosted gatherings, rituals, or perhaps something more enigmatic. Every step along its uneven terraces evokes the presence of those who once lived and labored here, though their voices remain silent, absorbed by the passage of time. Archaeologists date La Quemada to between the 8th and 12th centuries CE, situating it in a period of regional transformation in Mesoamerica. The site itself appears to have been both a defensive stronghold and a ceremonial center. Its steep staircases and fortified walls suggest the urgency of protection, while the large open plaza hints at communal gatherings or religious observances. Excavations have uncovered artifacts ranging from obsidian tools and pottery to human remains, providing clues about daily life, trade, and social hierarchy. Yet, despite decades of research, the purpose and origin of La Quemada remain partially obscured. Why was such a sprawling complex built in this remote, rugged terrain? And what drove its construction in a period dominated by other, more urban Mesoamerican centers? Walking among the terraces, one cannot help but notice the site's peculiar geometry. Platforms and walls follow irregular contours of the hill, yet alignments and stairways hint at intentional planning. Could these choices reflect astronomical or calendrical purposes, as has been suggested for other Mesoamerican complexes? Observers have noted the possibility that certain plazas and corridors align with solstices or lunar cycles, indicating an advanced understanding of the heavens. Yet, without written records or codices, such conclusions remain speculative. Did the builders of La Quemada encode meaning in their construction, symbols, measurements, or pathways designed to communicate with the cosmos? Or were they simply responding to the practical constraints of the rocky terrain? The citadel also raises questions about the scale and organization required for its creation. Constructing terraces of volcanic stone, carving stairways, and erecting fortified walls on such a steep hillside would have demanded significant coordination and labor. How did a society without apparent centralized bureaucracy or monumental architecture elsewhere in the region achieve such feats? Some scholars propose that La Quemada served as a regional power center, drawing labor and resources from surrounding communities. Others suggest it may have functioned as a ceremonial refuge, a sanctuary during periods of conflict or environmental stress. Yet, even these explanations leave gaps. The sheer precision of certain structures, the seemingly deliberate placement of walls and corridors, and the unresolved question of why the citadel was eventually abandoned. Adding to the intrigue is the citadel's association with fire. Its name, La Quemada, translates to the burned place, a reference to evidence of widespread burning found across the site. Was this the result of warfare, ritual destruction, or something else entirely? Archaeological traces suggest that fire consumed significant portions of the complex, yet the reason remains uncertain. Did inhabitants deliberately burn structures as part of a ceremonial practice? Or did catastrophe, conflict, or environmental stress bring an abrupt end to life here? The silence of the stones only deepens the mystery, inviting us to imagine scenarios that span the practical to the speculative. Even the surrounding landscape seems charged with unanswered questions. Trails leading to other nearby settlements suggest connections to larger networks of trade and influence. Yet La Quemada's role within this regional system is unclear. Was it a fortress guarding a frontier, a sacred site drawing pilgrims from afar, or a hybrid of both? Could it have been a focal point for knowledge, ritual, or governance lost to history? Every angle, every terrace, every worn stair evokes a society that possessed skill, purpose, and intent, but one whose motivations and methods are now largely hidden. Standing in the fading light, looking down over the terraced slopes and across the surrounding highlands, one cannot ignore the sense of enduring mystery. La Quemada is a place of both human achievement and unanswered questions, where every stone raises new inquiries about the people who shaped it. Why did they invest so much labor into this remote hilltop? What knowledge or beliefs guided their hands? And what remnants of that knowledge might still lie buried, waiting for discovery? As the wind whispers across the terraces, the citadel continues to pose its silent challenge. Some mysteries are built not to be solved quickly, but to endure, prompting reflection and wonder long after their builders have vanished. As we leave the rugged terraces of La Quemada behind, our journey moves northward into the rolling landscapes of the southeastern United States, to a place where Earth itself has been shaped into silent monuments, the Moundville Earthworks in Alabama. From a distance, the site appears deceptively simple, grassy rises scattered across a broad river floodplain. But upon closer inspection, these rises reveal themselves as deliberate, monumental constructions. Earthen mounds, some rising more than 20 feet high, arranged with careful symmetry around an open central plaza. Each mound, each flattened summit, speaks to human labor and purpose stretched across generations, yet the reason for their precise layout remains elusive. Moundville was the political and ceremonial heart of one of the most sophisticated Mississippian cultures, flourishing between 1000 and 1450 CE. Archaeological excavations reveal a society with complex hierarchies, extensive trade networks, and deeply rooted spiritual practices. Artifacts, ceramic vessels etched with intricate patterns, copper ornaments, carved stone tools, and ceremonial objects suggest that the site was both a center of governance and a sacred landscape. Yet even with these findings, Moundville presents puzzles that resist conventional explanation. Why were the mounds so carefully oriented, not just in relation to one another, but in alignment with the cardinal directions? Was this purely symbolic, practical, or astronomical in nature? The central plaza, a wide open space framed by the surrounding mounds, suggests gatherings of enormous social and religious significance. Scholars propose it may have hosted seasonal ceremonies, ritual feasts, or political assemblies. Still, the specifics of those events remain speculative. Evidence of post holes, platforms, and sunken buildings hints at structures no longer standing, yet their precise functions, administrative, ceremonial, or residential, remain uncertain. Some mounds appear to have been reserved for elite burials, while others may have served as stages for public display or religious rites. Could there have been codes embedded in the placement of these mounds, a hidden geometry understood only by those who built and used them? The scale and labor invested in constructing Moundville also provoke questions that linger to this day. Moving millions of cubic feet of soil with primitive tools, the builders created terraces, ramps, and flat-topped summits designed to endure the ravages of time and weather. How did they organize such large-scale efforts without written records or advanced machinery? Some researchers suggest communal mobilization, an effort coordinated over decades or even centuries. Yet the sheer precision of mound placement, the consistency of their shapes, and their interrelation with ceremonial space hint at knowledge and planning that modern reconstructions struggle to replicate. Were the builders guided by ritual knowledge, astronomy, or principles now lost to history? Adding to the intrigue are subtle features that resist straightforward interpretation. Moundville's surrounding palisade, for example, suggests defensive considerations, yet it also defines a sacred perimeter, blending protection with symbolic separation. The spacing of the mounds, their relative heights, and the specific types of artifacts recovered in different locations imply social hierarchies or spiritual significance. But what messages were intended, and to whom? Some theorists speculate that the mounds were designed to map the cosmos, encoding cycles of the sun, moon, and stars into their very layout. Others propose that the site functioned as a ceremonial calendar, guiding agricultural, ritual, and social events in ways now impossible to reconstruct fully. The more one studies Moundville, the more its mysteries deepen. Burials uncovered within the mounds suggest a complex social structure, yet the identities, relationships, and motivations of those interred remain largely unknown. Certain artifacts, unusually sophisticated in design and execution, raise questions about technological abilities that appear advanced for the period and location. How were these objects crafted with such precision, and why were they placed in specific contexts within the mounds? What stories did they tell about the people who lived, ruled, and worshipped here, stories that have now been obscured by time and silence? Even the landscape surrounding Moundville contributes to the enigma. The Black Warrior River, meandering nearby, may have served as a lifeline for trade, transport, and sustenance. Yet it also frames the mounds in a way that emphasizes their prominence, their visibility from afar, and their dominance over the floodplain. Was the choice of location strategic, spiritual, or both? Did the river itself hold sacred significance, shaping ritual and settlement patterns in ways we may never fully understand? And beneath the surface, what lies undiscovered? Subterranean structures, hidden burials, or traces of activities long erased by centuries of erosion and human intervention? Standing on the summit of the largest mound, looking out over the sprawling network of terraces, plazas, and smaller mounds, one is struck by the quiet magnitude of human achievement. Moundville is at once familiar and enigmatic, a landscape sculpted by hands long gone but still capable of evoking awe. Every terrace, every carefully placed mound, every artifact recovered raises further questions. How did this society conceive of space, hierarchy, and sacredness? What knowledge guided their construction, and how much of it has been irretrievably lost? As the wind rustles through the grass-covered mounds and the river reflects the late afternoon sun, the site seems to whisper, inviting reflection on human ingenuity and the limits of our understanding. Moundville endures as a testament to creativity, organization, and spiritual expression, but it also remains a riddle. What secrets are buried beneath its earth, and what truths about its builders lie still hidden, waiting for discovery? In contemplating these questions, we are reminded that some mysteries, like the mounds themselves, are constructed to endure, prompting us to wonder and explore long after the echoes of the past have faded. From the sprawling mounds of Moundville, our journey now takes us far south, deep into the dense, mist-shrouded jungles of Colombia's Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Hidden among towering palms, thick vines, and cascading streams lies a city that time itself seemed determined to reclaim. Ciudad Perdida, the lost city. Unlike the broad open landscapes of the American Southeast, here the terrain folds upon itself. Steep slopes, narrow valleys, and rushing rivers create a natural fortress, cloaking terraces, plazas, and stairways in an almost impenetrable green embrace. The lower terraces, in particular, emerge like secret layers of memory, rising in steps of carefully laid stone that appear to grow organically from the mountainside, each platform an echo of human endeavor woven into the jungle. Ciudad Perdida is believed to have been founded around the 9th or 10th century CE, predating Machu Picchu by centuries, and was likely a major urban center for the Tairona people. Archaeologists estimate that the city could have housed thousands of inhabitants, a network of communities connected through a complex series of stone terraces, roads, and ceremonial spaces. Yet much about the site remains enigmatic. How did the Tairona carve these terraces into such steep, unstable slopes without collapsing the mountainside? What tools, knowledge, or techniques allowed them to create structures so enduring, resilient to centuries of tropical rain, seismic activity, and encroaching vegetation? Walking along the terraces today, it is easy to feel dwarfed by the scale of the undertaking and to wonder at the ingenuity required to make the mountain itself a canvas for human habitation. The lower terraces are particularly striking. Here, platforms stretch outward from the hillsides, creating a network of spaces that may have served residential, ceremonial, or administrative purposes. Paths connect terraces in ways that suggest careful planning, and some terraces seem to align with streams or natural contours of the land, perhaps reflecting an intimate understanding of the surrounding environment. Yet, the logic behind their placement remains tantalizingly opaque. Were they organized according to social hierarchy, spiritual significance, or agricultural practicality? The terrace's arrangement hints at a worldview in which community, nature, and ritual were inseparably linked, but the precise meaning remains obscured by time and silence. Excavations have revealed that Ciudad Perdida was much more than a residential site. Pottery, stone tools, and ceremonial artifacts indicate sophisticated craftsmanship, trade networks, and ritualized social structures. Some stones bear intricate carvings, others mark thresholds or ceremonial boundaries, suggesting an architectural language whose meaning has been lost. Scholars debate whether certain terraces were exclusively ceremonial or whether they blended sacred and everyday life. The lower terraces, closest to the rivers and valleys, may have served as gateways between the natural and built environments, connecting the Tairona's spiritual practices to the rhythms of the land. And yet, with each discovery, new questions arise. Why were these terraces designed in such precise proportions, and how much of their organization reflects practical planning versus symbolic or cosmological intention? The construction of Ciudad Perdida also presents unresolved mysteries in terms of logistics and labor. Stones had to be quarried, transported, and carefully fitted into terraces without mortar or metal tools. Yet the terraces have withstood centuries of erosion and frequent seismic disturbances. How was such monumental labor organized? Did the Tairona employ advanced knowledge of soil stabilization, drainage, and microclimate management? Observers have noted the ingenuity of terraces that channel rainfall, prevent landslides, and create stable, flat surfaces for dwellings and ceremonial spaces. Even today, the lower terrace's stability remains remarkable, suggesting knowledge that surpasses what might be expected from a society isolated in the high jungle. Adding to the enigma is the broader network of Ciudad Perdida, which extends far beyond the visible terraces. Trails lead into dense forest, connecting the city to smaller satellite settlements, sacred springs, and hidden ceremonial sites. Some researchers speculate that these connections formed a sophisticated socio-religious map, a living system that integrated population, agriculture, and ritual in ways still difficult to fully reconstruct. Certain terraces may have been deliberately obscured or designed to remain hidden from outsiders, a strategy for protection, secrecy, or spiritual purification. The lower terraces, with their proximity to rivers and valleys, could have been the first interface between the city and the outside world, spaces of interaction that combined hospitality, control, and ritual observance in ways we can only imagine. Even the natural environment seems part of the mystery. Thick mist often cloaks the terraces in shifting veils, blurring the lines between jungle and stone. The floor itself appears to reclaim, yet also preserve, the city. Roots twist around stone walls, ferns carpet stairways, and the sound of rushing water fills the plazas. The Tairona may have intentionally worked with the landscape, allowing nature to become a protective and spiritual partner in their urban design. Yet how much of the city's original layout remains hidden beneath centuries of vegetation? How many terraces, plazas, or ceremonial objects lie buried, waiting to reveal secrets that could reshape our understanding of this remarkable civilization? Standing among the lower terraces today, one cannot ignore the palpable sense of human intention intertwined with mystery. Each carefully leveled platform, each stone stairway, and each path connecting terraces whispers of a society that understood its environment, mastered its resources, and imbued its constructions with purpose, but whose full story remains largely inaccessible. Who lived here, and how did they experience the city's intricate rhythms of life, labor, and ritual? What knowledge guided the Tairona in balancing human ambition with the unforgiving jungle? And what lies still hidden, awaiting discovery beneath the soil and canopy, where the past holds its secrets in patient silence? As sunlight filters through the dense foliage, casting shifting patterns across the lower terraces, it becomes evident that Ciudad Perdida is more than a collection of stone and earth. It is a living testament to ingenuity, resilience, and mystery. The lower terraces invite us not only to imagine the lives of those who built them, but also to confront the limits of our understanding. What remains invisible? And what can we learn if we follow the subtle clues left by a civilization that thrived in harmony with, and perhaps in quiet defiance of, its formidable environment? In these quiet, hidden terraces, the questions endure, as compelling and unresolved as the jungle that surrounds them. From the misty terraces of Ciudad Perdida, our journey moves across continents, following the thread of human ingenuity to the sun-baked cliffs of southern Egypt. Here, along the rugged banks of the Nile, rises a place of enduring mystery, Gebel el-Silsila. Unlike the grand temples of Luxor or Karnak, this site is carved directly from the sandstone cliffs themselves. Rock shrines, quarries, and shrines etched into vertical faces overlooking the river's relentless flow. The sheer walls glint faintly in the desert light, flecked with ochre and shadow, as if the stone itself holds memory. Wind and water have smoothed some surfaces, while others bear sharp incisions, hieroglyphs, figures, and motifs that speak to both devotion and meticulous craftsmanship. Yet the purpose and full scope of these shrines remain elusive, leaving us to wonder why such labor-intensive work was undertaken in such an isolated, unforgiving environment. Gebel el-Silsila is historically recognized as a major sandstone quarry, providing blocks that would shape temples and monuments along the Nile for centuries. Archaeological studies indicate that pharaohs and their builders sourced stone here for projects spanning the New Kingdom and beyond. Yet scattered among the practical excavation sites are small shrines, chapels, and reliefs carved directly into the cliffs. Some depict pharaohs offering to gods. Others show symbols whose meanings are now only partially understood. Why were these sacred spaces integrated into a working quarry? Were they simply expressions of ritual piety, or did they serve a more complex role, perhaps consecrating the stone before it left the cliffs, ensuring divine favor upon the buildings to be constructed elsewhere? Walking along the cliffside today, one senses the careful planning and technical skill required to create these shrines. Staircases, ramps, and niches are carved into rock faces hundreds of meters above the river. In some areas, inscriptions are accompanied by small water channels or depressions whose function is unclear. Did these facilitate ritual purification, mark sacred alignments, or serve practical purposes related to quarrying? Scholars note that certain reliefs and shrines appear aligned with the sun during solstices, casting shadows across carved figures in ways that suggest a deliberate astronomical or symbolic intent. Yet with so many unanswered questions, each discovery seems to expand rather than diminish the mystery. Equally perplexing is the degree of technical mastery evident in the quarries themselves. The massive blocks of sandstone extracted here were often cut with precision, some weighing several tons. Transporting them downstream along the Nile required extraordinary coordination, yet little record remains of the labor, engineering, or tools used. Modern researchers struggle to replicate the techniques accurately using only the implements likely available to the Egyptians of the New Kingdom. How were these colossal blocks shaped, lifted, and floated with such consistency? Could the work have been guided by a knowledge of geometry, physics, and material properties that has since been lost, or was it simply the result of generations of accumulated skill honed over centuries? Beyond the practical, the site evokes questions of belief, symbolism, and ritual. Certain shrines appear deliberately hidden in recesses of the cliff, visible only to those who approached along narrow paths. Others are positioned prominently, commanding views of the river and surrounding landscape. Some reliefs depict deities rarely seen in other temples, their forms carved in unusual proportions or styles. Were these expressions of regional cults, secret rites, or artistic experiments? And why do certain shrines seem to mirror the shapes and contours of the surrounding cliffs, as though the natural and the sacred were intentionally blended into a single harmonious composition? The environment itself adds layers to the mystery. The desert sun, the river's changing currents, and centuries of erosion have altered the cliffs, obscuring some carvings while revealing others in dramatic relief. Seasonal floods would have transformed the landscape around the quarries, perhaps altering access routes and shifting the relationship between human activity and natural forces. How much of what we see today reflects original intent, and how much has been shaped by the passage of time? Could there be hidden shrines or inscriptions still buried in shadowed niches or collapsed rock, waiting to illuminate unknown aspects of this enigmatic site? Gebel el-Silsila also challenges conventional assumptions about Egyptian labor and ritual. Unlike massive urban centers like Thebes or Giza, this site integrates practical quarrying with spiritual expression in ways that are rarely documented elsewhere. Was this a regional innovation, a pragmatic blend of sacred and mundane, or an example of a broader philosophy connecting work, landscape, and devotion? Did the Egyptians who labored here perceive the river, the cliffs, and the stones as living entities, worthy of ritual acknowledgement before each cut? And what cultural or spiritual knowledge guided their hands in shaping both rock and relief? Standing on a narrow ledge, looking down at the flowing Nile, it becomes clear that Gebel el-Silsila is more than a quarry. It is a convergence of human skill, devotion, and mystery. Every carved figure, every unfinished block, every hidden shrine hints at a society capable of extraordinary technical achievement, while remaining deeply attuned to the spiritual and symbolic dimensions of their work. The interplay of natural landscape and human design raises questions that endure. Why were these shrines positioned as they were? What secrets might yet lie in unseen corners? and how much of the knowledge that guided their construction has been lost to time. As shadows lengthen across the sandstone cliffs and the river reflects the fading light, the rock shrines of Gebel el-Silsila seem to whisper across the centuries. Here, labor, devotion, and artistry converge in ways we may never fully reconstruct, leaving a site that is at once tangible and unknowable. It is a place where questions outweigh answers, where every carving and every terrace invites us to ponder the ingenuity, belief, and determination of a civilization that shaped both stone and mystery into enduring form. What remains hidden in the cliffs, and what truths about those who labored here will continue to elude our understanding. In the silence of the desert and the flow of the Nile, the mystery persists, urging reflection and discovery. From the sun-baked cliffs of Gebel el-Silsila, our journey now sweeps across oceans to the remote islands of French Polynesia, where the turquoise waters of the South Pacific meet volcanic peaks and windswept shores. Here, on the sacred island of Raiatea, lies Marae Taputapuatea, an ancient ceremonial complex whose stone foundations rise silently above the dense coastal vegetation. At first glance, it appears as a series of low stone platforms and upright pillars, framed by towering palms and the rhythmic pulse of the ocean. But a closer look reveals a deliberate geometry, a space meticulously arranged to connect the earthly, the spiritual, and the celestial. The stones are worn smooth by centuries of ritual and weather, yet their placement hints at an intentional alignment with the landscape, the horizon, and perhaps even the movements of the stars above. Marae Taputapuatea is widely regarded as the spiritual heart of Polynesia, a center where distant islands were linked through voyages, trade, and religious practice. Historical accounts and archaeological studies suggest the site dates back at least a millennium, serving as a hub for ceremonial life, navigation, and social cohesion. Oral traditions describe it as a sacred place of initiation, where priests, voyagers, and chiefs would gather to honor deities, seek guidance, and perform rites that shaped the cultural and spiritual fabric of the region. The Marae was not merely a local temple. It was a nexus of power, knowledge, and influence, reaching across hundreds of miles of open ocean. And yet, despite its prominence, the full extent of its purpose and the methods by which it was constructed remain enigmatic. Walking along the low stone platforms today, one is struck by the precision of their arrangement. Rectangular foundations, upright coral and basalt pillars, and expansive courtyards create spaces that are both functional and symbolic. Some researchers propose that the layout encodes cosmological knowledge, aligning with the rising and setting sun during solstices or marking seasonal cycles vital to agriculture and navigation. Others note that the orientation may have guided canoe voyages, serving as both spiritual compass and physical landmark for travelers across the vast Pacific. Were the Marae's builders mapping not just the heavens, but the ocean itself, embedding practical navigation within sacred architecture? And if so, what knowledge was inscribed into these stones that has now largely vanished? The construction of Marae Taputapuatea raises further questions about skill, labor, and societal organization. The stones, quarried from local volcanic rock or transported from nearby islets, were fitted together without mortar, forming durable structures that have withstood storms, earthquakes, and centuries of tropical climate. How did a society with no metal tools or written language achieve such precision and durability? Modern researchers attempting to replicate the construction find it difficult even with contemporary knowledge of engineering. Was there a combination of oral knowledge, ritual practice, and generations of trial and error that enabled these feats? Or did the site's sacred purpose inspire innovations that blurred the line between practical and spiritual ingenuity? Beyond the construction itself, the ceremonial aspects of Marae Taputapuatea add layers of mystery. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of offerings, carved stone idols, and arrangements suggesting ritual performance and social hierarchy. Yet the details of these ceremonies remain largely speculative, reconstructed from fragments, oral histories, and comparative studies across Polynesia. Some scholars suggest that the Marae functioned as a school for navigators and priests, a place where esoteric knowledge of the stars, ocean currents, and human relationships was passed down through generations. Could the very stones themselves encode this knowledge, a silent testament to practices that were intended to endure beyond the lifespan of any individual? Equally compelling is the site's connection to the wider Polynesian network. Taputapuatea was not isolated. It was part of a web of spiritual and social connections spanning the Pacific. Canoe voyages, cultural exchanges, and shared rituals indicate a level of sophistication that challenges assumptions about pre-contact societies in Oceania. How were these networks maintained across thousands of miles of open ocean? Did the Marae serve as both spiritual anchor and logistical hub, guiding not only religious practice, but also exploration, trade, and diplomacy? And if so, what knowledge of oceanic patterns, celestial navigation, and human organization made this possible, knowledge that seems astonishing even by today's standards? The environment itself contributes to the site's mystique. Surrounded by coral reefs, verdant hills, and the ever-present hum of the ocean, the Marae appears to exist in dialogue with nature. The placement of platforms may respond to wind, rainfall, and sunlight, creating spaces that are simultaneously functional, symbolic, and harmonious with the landscape. Seasonal tides and currents, shifting storms, and the constant growth of vegetation alter perceptions of the site, revealing some features while obscuring others. Could it be that the builders intentionally integrated natural processes into the design, embedding a rhythm of life, ritual, and observation into stone itself? Standing among the weathered pillars, one feels the weight of time and human intent. Marae Taputapuatea is both tangible and elusive, a place of visible construction and invisible knowledge. Each stone, each alignment, and each pathway whispers of a civilization deeply attuned to its environment, capable of extraordinary coordination and insight, yet leaving only fragments for us to interpret. How much of the knowledge encoded in its design has been lost to centuries of change, and what remains hidden beneath the earth, the vegetation, or in the silent transmission of oral tradition? What truths about human ingenuity, spiritual practice, and the mastery of distant seas remain buried, waiting for discovery? As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the stones and illuminating the ocean in a fiery glow, Marae Taputapuatea stands as a monument to human ambition, devotion, and mystery. The stones endure, the terraces persist, and the questions linger, urging us to consider not only what was built, but why, and how knowledge, skill, and belief converged to create something that continues to inspire awe and wonder across the centuries. In the quiet of the Pacific wind, the Marae seems to ask the same question that has echoed across time. What remains unseen, and what can we learn if we follow the subtle clues left by those who once shaped both stone and spirit? From the windswept terraces of Marae Taputapuatea, our journey turns once more, crossing oceans and continents to the temperate forests and volcanic plains of Japan. Here, among rolling hills and quiet river valleys, lie the enigmatic Jomon stone circles, arrangements of upright stones, often perfectly circular, scattered across the landscape like echoes of ancient ritual. At first glance, they seem simple, carefully placed stones surrounding open spaces, their surfaces worn smooth by time and weather. Yet as one moves among them, the scale, precision, and intent become undeniable. Each circle is a testament to deliberate construction, reflecting a people attuned to the rhythms of the natural world, the sky above, and perhaps forces now lost to our understanding. Dating back between 3000 and 2500 BCE, the Jomon stone circles emerged from a period when Japan was transitioning from mobile hunter-gatherer communities to more sedentary village life. The Jomon people are known for their intricately decorated pottery, ritual objects, and finely crafted tools, yet the circles suggest a different kind of sophistication. One not only technological, but spatial, ceremonial, and perhaps cosmological. Archaeologists have long debated their purpose. Were these circles sites of communal gatherings, religious ceremonies, astronomical observation, or even symbolic mapping of social or spiritual order? The answer remains tantalizingly out of reach, as each arrangement seems to pose more questions than it resolves. Walking along the stone perimeter, the careful alignment becomes apparent. Some circles feature entrances oriented toward specific mountains, rivers, or other natural landmarks, hinting at a deliberate dialogue between human design and the landscape. Others seem to align with celestial events, marking solstices or equinoxes, suggesting that the Jomon may have used these circles to track the passage of the seasons or guide agricultural activities. Could these arrangements have encoded knowledge of time, climate, and the cosmos in ways we are only beginning to perceive? And if so, what inspired these early architects to translate celestial and terrestrial observation into stone? The construction of the circles raises further questions. The stones vary in size from small boulders to massive slabs, yet they are positioned with apparent precision. How did communities lacking advanced tools move, lift, and arrange such stones, sometimes weighing hundreds of kilograms, across uneven terrain? Were their techniques passed down through generations, lost to history, or did the process itself carry ritual significance, binding people to the land and to one another? Even experimental archaeology, attempting to replicate their work with simple tools, struggles to fully account for the consistency and scale of these constructions. Evidence from surrounding sites hints at broader societal and spiritual contexts. Excavations have revealed hearths, pottery, and remains of ritual deposits within and near the circles, suggesting that they were not merely symbolic, but spaces of active human engagement. Did families or clans gather here for seasonal festivals, offerings to deities, or rites of passage? Some scholars suggest that the circles functioned as social maps, marking communal territories or sacred geography, a tangible expression of shared identity and cosmological understanding. Yet, without written records, the specific meanings of symbols, orientations, and groupings remain largely speculative. The environment itself deepens the mystery. Many circles are located on hilltops, ridges, or river terraces, elevated above the surrounding landscape and commanding wide views of the horizon. The interplay of light, shadow, and perspective transforms the circles throughout the day and seasons, creating shifting patterns that may have enhanced ritual or observational functions. Were these natural phenomena integrated deliberately into the design, a way of linking human perception, time, and sacred space? And if so, how deeply did the Jomon understand and manipulate these subtleties, encoding them into their constructions without leaving written testimony? Some circles are isolated, while others form clusters, suggesting patterns or networks whose logic is not immediately apparent. Did these represent regional ceremonial centers, pilgrimage routes, or sites of specialized ritual practice? The discovery of smaller subsidiary stones and carved motifs within the circles adds to the enigma. Some shapes and arrangements have no clear analogues elsewhere in the archaeological record, hinting at symbolic or spiritual systems that remain largely invisible to us. What stories, beliefs, or cosmologies did these stones encode, and how much of that knowledge has been irretrievably lost? Even today, the Jomon stone circles resist easy interpretation. Standing within a circle as the wind rustles through nearby trees, the stones convey a sense of presence, a quiet reminder that these spaces were deliberately constructed and imbued with meaning. Each stone seems to ask questions about time, community, and human engagement with both landscape and cosmos. How did the Jomon conceive of space and ritual? What inspired their careful placement of stone, and what knowledge guided their hands? Could these circles have encoded practical, spiritual, and astronomical functions simultaneously, reflecting an integrated understanding of human life and natural order? As sunlight shifts across the stones, casting elongated shadows and highlighting the textures of ancient surfaces, the circles invite reflection. They are both visible and mysterious, offering tangible evidence of human skill and yet leaving their deepest secrets intact. The precision, placement, and scale challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric societies, prompting us to wonder what knowledge has been lost to time. In the quiet of these forests and river valleys, the Jomon stone circles endure as a testament to ingenuity, ritual, and mystery, a place where the past continues to speak in whispers, urging us to look closer, question further, and ponder what remains unseen. In these circles, the passage of millennia has not diminished the power of human intention. Every stone, every alignment, and every open space is a silent testament to a society that shaped its environment with care, purpose, and perhaps a profound understanding of forces we have yet to fully grasp. What remains hidden within the stones themselves, or in the knowledge lost to centuries of silence? And how much more might we learn if we continue to listen, observe, and wonder? The answers, like the circles, remain tantalizingly just beyond reach, enduring as a quiet, enduring mystery, enduring. From the stone circles of Japan, our journey now carries us across seas once navigated by mariners guided only by stars and currents, to the lush riverbanks of northern Malaysia, where the remnants of one of Southeast Asia's oldest known civilizations quietly emerge, the Sungai Batu ancient port structures. Hidden within mangrove-lined estuaries and tidal flats, these structures sit partially submerged, their earthen mounds and stone foundations emerging sporadically through mud and vegetation. At first glance, the site seems unassuming, yet each stone, each brick, and each carefully laid embankment hints at a sophistication that challenges assumptions about early maritime societies in this region. The site is at once natural and constructed, a delicate interplay of river, tide, and human ingenuity that has persisted for over a millennium. Sungai Batu is estimated to have flourished around 1500 BCE to 500 CE, making it among the oldest known urbanized trading centers in Southeast Asia. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of brick kilns, iron smelting furnaces, quays, and pathways, suggesting a thriving economy based on metallurgy, maritime trade, and agriculture. Yet what draws fascination is not only the scale of construction, but the level of organization implied by these remains. How did these communities coordinate such labor-intensive activities along shifting riverbanks, in a landscape prone to flooding and sediment deposition? What knowledge guided their construction of foundations that could withstand tidal forces, erosion, and the weight of ships? Even today, the ingenuity of these early builders is difficult to replicate with modern understanding. Walking along the exposed embankments, one notices the deliberate layout of quays and kilns. Certain structures are aligned with the river's flow, perhaps optimizing the movement of goods and vessels, while others appear positioned for ceremonial or social functions. Could these alignments also reflect astronomical considerations, tidal patterns, or seasonal winds? The precision of the brickwork, some dating back more than 3,000 years, suggests careful planning and technical skill. How did these early engineers conceptualize the site as both a functional port and a community center, blending commerce, technology, and ritual? And what principles, now lost to time, guided their choices? Evidence from excavations deepens the intrigue. Kilns capable of producing high-quality bricks and furnaces for smelting iron indicate that Sungai Batu was a hub of technological innovation, yet the scale of production is astonishing for its time. How did these early metallurgists master the complex processes required to convert raw ore into usable metal, while simultaneously constructing durable port structures in a challenging environment? Was the knowledge localized, preserved within specialized guilds, or shared across broader networks of trade and expertise? The discovery of imported artifacts, including beads, ceramics, and other goods, suggests connections extending far beyond the immediate region, hinting at a port that was not only a local center, but a node in an extensive maritime network. The strategic placement of the port adds another layer to the mystery. Situated along a river estuary with access to the Malacca Strait, the site allowed for both inland resource collection and open sea trade. Yet it also required careful management of tides, sediment, and seasonal fluctuations. Did the builders possess knowledge of hydrodynamics, soil stabilization, or flood control that has since been lost? Some scholars speculate that the structures may have incorporated early forms of hydraulic engineering, allowing the river itself to shape and sustain human activity rather than hinder it. The integration of technology, landscape, and commerce at Sungai Batu remains remarkable, raising questions about the extent of knowledge possessed by these early maritime communities. Adding to the intrigue are aspects of the site that resist straightforward explanation. Certain mounds and embankments appear unusually regular, suggesting planning beyond simple functionality. Some stone alignments have no apparent role in trade or habitation, while others seem intentionally isolated or positioned along visual axes. Could these indicate ritual significance, territorial markers, or symbolic representations embedded within the urban plan? And what can be inferred about the social hierarchy, governance, or spiritual beliefs of the people who constructed and maintained this port over centuries of operation? The environment itself preserves and obscures the past. Mangrove roots intertwine with bricks, tides cover and uncover pathways, and sediment shifts with each monsoon season. The river is both a protector and a revealer, simultaneously concealing ancient walls and guiding archaeologists to new discoveries. How much of Sungai Batu remains hidden beneath mud and water, waiting to reveal secrets that could reshape our understanding of early Southeast Asian civilization? And how did these builders anticipate and adapt to such a dynamic, ever-changing landscape with the tools and knowledge at their disposal? Standing among the partially exposed quays and kilns, one feels the weight of centuries of human ingenuity intertwined with natural forces. Sungai Batu is more than a port. It is a living record of adaptation, technological mastery, and social organization. Every brick, every embankment, and every alignment is a silent testament to the knowledge and effort of a people whose achievements challenge our assumptions about early civilizations. How did they master construction, metallurgy, and maritime logistics in a time and place so distant from centers of early urban development elsewhere? And what more lies hidden beneath the river and sediment, still intact, still waiting to speak? As the sun glints off the meandering river and the mangroves sway in a warm, salty breeze, Sungai Batu stands as a monument to both human ambition and enduring mystery. Its structures hint at a sophisticated civilization capable of remarkable technological, social, and perhaps ritual innovation. Yet, many questions remain. How did these people coordinate such complex endeavors? What knowledge guided their constructions, and what has been lost to time, water, and vegetation? The site endures, a reminder that some of history's greatest achievements remain partially unseen, challenging us to explore, observe, and wonder. What secrets lie buried in mud, stone, and water, waiting for those who are patient enough to seek them? From the mangrove-lined estuaries of Sungai Batu, our journey now carries us across the Indian Ocean to the arid, sun-baked coast of Eritrea, where the remains of a once thriving port whisper of maritime power long lost to history, Adulis. Here, along the Red Sea, jagged cliffs descend toward hidden coves, their rocky edges meeting shallow waters that once cradled ships from far-off lands. The ruins lie mostly buried under sand and stone, yet fragments of walls, foundations, and quays emerge, hinting at the scale and sophistication of this ancient harbor. Even today, the site evokes a sense of both grandeur and fragility, a settlement shaped by commerce, politics, and human ambition, yet reclaimed by centuries of desert winds and shifting tides. Adulis served as the primary port of the Aksumite Kingdom, a trading empire that dominated the Horn of Africa from around the 1st century CE to the 7th century CE. Ancient texts reference it as a hub for incense, ivory, gold, and exotic animals, linking the Red Sea, the Nile Valley, Arabia, and beyond. Archaeological evidence confirms that ships carrying goods from the Mediterranean, India, and the Arabian Peninsula anchored here, while local artisans produced ceramics, tools, and possibly coinage that circulated across vast trade networks. Yet, despite its historical prominence, much about Adulis remains unclear. How did this port function at such a high level of sophistication, and why has so little of it survived intact, leaving only tantalizing glimpses of a once vibrant urban center? Walking along the shoreline, the organization of the ruins becomes subtly apparent. Terraced embankments and foundations suggest the presence of warehouses, administrative structures, and marketplaces. Narrow channels may have guided water inland, supporting storage and loading of goods, while stone-lined paths indicate the movement of people and materials across the port. How did the Aksumites coordinate such a complex operation in an environment shaped by tides, seasonal storms, and scarce fresh water? The surviving architecture hints at both practical engineering and strategic foresight, yet much of its original layout remains buried, lost to centuries of erosion and human activity. The port's construction raises additional mysteries. Archaeologists have found traces of imported bricks, mortar, and stone, as well as local volcanic rock used to stabilize quays and embankments. Some quays appear aligned with natural channels in ways that suggest advanced understanding of tidal patterns and currents. Could the engineers of Adulis have anticipated not only the needs of moored vessels, but also the seasonal behavior of the Red Sea, designing a harbor resilient enough to endure both human and environmental pressures? Modern attempts to replicate such construction, even with contemporary knowledge of hydraulics and masonry, struggle to achieve the same efficiency and longevity, emphasizing the skill and insight of the original builders. Artifacts recovered from the site deepen the sense of mystery. Imported amphorae, beads, and jewelry indicate far-reaching trade, while locally produced pottery and tools suggest a highly organized artisan community. Inscriptions in Greek, Ge'ez, and South Arabian scripts point to a cosmopolitan population capable of cross-cultural interaction and administration. Yet the absence of detailed written records describing the city's layout, governance, or daily routines leaves historians reliant on inference. What social, economic, and political structures allowed this port to flourish as a nexus of global exchange? And why did it eventually decline, leaving only fragments beneath sand and brush? Some scholars speculate that Adulis's decline may have been hastened by shifts in trade routes, climate change, or political upheaval, yet other factors remain more elusive. Was there a deliberate abandonment, or did the port succumb gradually to the relentless forces of desertification and coastal erosion? Evidence of fortifications and strategically placed structures hints at defense against both human rivals and natural hazards, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of vulnerability, risk, and planning. Could the placement of certain walls, platforms, or quays have encoded practical knowledge, spiritual significance, or both? And if so, what insights remain hidden, waiting beneath layers of sand and stone? Even the surrounding landscape contributes to the enigma of Adulis. From the cliffs above, the Red Sea stretches to the horizon, its waters a corridor of connection and commerce. Inland, the rugged terrain rises abruptly, separating the port from fertile valleys and hinterlands. How did the Axumites navigate these physical constraints, balancing access to the sea with the security of inland settlements? Did the geography itself influence ritual, trade, and social organization, integrating natural features into the urban and spiritual fabric of the port? And what can we learn from the subtle interplay between built structures and landscape in understanding the mindset of those who once shaped this place? Standing on a crumbling quay, looking out over the Red Sea, one senses the remarkable coordination, foresight, and knowledge that must have underpinned life in Adulis. The stones, partially buried in sand, the remains of foundations, and the occasional shard of pottery all speak to a community capable of extraordinary logistics, cultural exchange, and technical skill. Yet much of the port's story remains inaccessible. How did merchants, sailors, and administrators manage the complex flow of goods, people, and information across such vast distances? What technological, organizational, and cultural knowledge allowed them to build a harbor that could endure tides, storms, and the demands of international trade in a pre-industrial world? As the sun sets over the Red Sea, casting long shadows across the scattered ruins and shimmering waves, Adulis stands as both a monument and a mystery. It is a place where human ambition, ingenuity, and adaptation converged with the natural world, producing a hub of trade, culture, and possibly ritual that remains partially hidden from our view. What lies beneath the sand, the shifting tides, and the encroaching desert? Structures yet to be uncovered, artifacts yet to be discovered, knowledge yet to be interpreted. The port endures as a reminder that even in places lost to time, human ingenuity and curiosity leave traces that continue to inspire wonder. And in those traces, the questions persist, quietly urging us to seek, to explore, and to imagine the full scope of a civilization that once commanded the waves of the Red Sea. From the windswept Red Sea coast and the buried ruins of Adulis, our journey now moves inland across the highlands of the Andes to the rugged valleys of Peru, where the mist clings to terraced slopes and the mountains themselves seem to cradle secrets of ancient devotion. Here lies the Kotosh religious temple, one of the oldest known ceremonial centers in the Americas, perched quietly above river valleys and surrounded by the enduring hum of mountain winds. The site appears modest at first glance: low stone walls, compact enclosures, and remnants of what may have been adobe or clay structures. Yet beneath its simplicity lies a depth of ritual complexity and architectural ingenuity that continues to challenge modern understanding. Each stone, each sunken hearth, each plastered wall seems to echo the voices of those who built it millennia ago. Kotosh is remarkable not only for its age. Estimates suggest construction began as early as 3000 BCE, but also for its unique architectural features, most notably the Temple of the Crossed Hands, a chamber adorned with bas-relief carvings of crossed human arms. The symbolism remains enigmatic. Were these hands emblematic of unity, spiritual protection, or a representation of deities now lost to time? The precise meaning has eluded archaeologists, as no contemporary written record exists, leaving us to interpret intention from stone, soil, and spatial arrangement. Even the act of carving these forms into hardened clay or stone would have required skill, ritual precision, and time, suggesting a society deeply invested in spiritual expression and the codification of belief. Walking through the site today, the layout conveys a deliberate sense of order. Small chambers connect through narrow corridors, some with evidence of low platforms that may have served as altars or podiums for ritual activity. Sunlight, entering from carefully positioned openings, illuminates specific areas at certain times of day, hinting at possible astronomical or calendrical functions. Could the builders have designed these spaces to align with solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial phenomena, integrating observation of the heavens into their religious practice? And if so, how did they acquire and preserve such knowledge, passed through generations without writing, yet precise enough to survive millennia? The construction techniques themselves are astonishing. Walls of stone and clay demonstrate an understanding of both material properties and seismic resilience, essential in a region prone to earthquakes. Floors and hearths are carefully compacted, creating surfaces that have endured centuries of use and burial. The crossed hands reliefs, carved in negative space, suggest that artisans of Kotosh were adept at manipulating both form and symbolism. How did these early builders develop such technical mastery, and how did ritual, labor, and knowledge intersect in their work? Were these skills shared communally, passed from master to apprentice, or held within select priestly or artisan classes? Evidence of ceremonial practice deepens the mystery. Archaeologists have uncovered altars, offerings, and traces of ritual fire within the temples, suggesting that Kotosh functioned as a focal point for religious life, perhaps influencing surrounding settlements. Yet the scale and sophistication of the site far exceed what one might expect from a small mountain community. How did these early people organize labor, resources, and knowledge to construct a sacred center that would endure for centuries? Could the site have served as a pilgrimage destination, a center for spiritual instruction, or a locus for coordinating social cohesion across the highlands? The environment itself seems intimately entwined with the site's purpose. The temple sits on elevated terrain, overlooking river valleys that feed into larger networks of water and trade. Seasonal rains, mountain mists, and the interplay of light and shadow transform the site throughout the day and year, perhaps deliberately enhancing ritual experience. Could the builders have conceived of the temple as a bridge between the natural and spiritual worlds, integrating environmental awareness into ceremonial design? And what elements of that relationship are now lost, hidden beneath centuries of sediment, vegetation, and human activity? Kotosh also challenges conventional assumptions about prehistoric societies. The level of symbolic expression, technical skill, and spatial organization suggests a community capable of long-term planning and cultural continuity, long before the rise of more famous Andean civilizations such as Chavin or Inca. How did knowledge transfer and ritual practice evolve over centuries in a society without written language? Were there lost traditions, esoteric teachings, or methods of architectural and spiritual innovation that have vanished alongside the people who created them? And if so, how much of that legacy can be recovered through careful observation, excavation, and interpretation of surviving structures? Standing within the temple, the silence is profound. Each stone wall, each carefully plastered chamber, and each remaining carving seems to radiate intention, effort, and reverence. The crossed hands, faintly illuminated by angled sunlight, serve as both a symbol and a question. What did these gestures mean to the people who carved them, and what message were they leaving for generations beyond their own? The site evokes an awareness of the interplay between human ambition, spiritual insight, and environmental understanding, a convergence that allowed an ancient society to construct a sacred space that continues to intrigue and inspire. As the Andes' afternoon light filters across terraces and chambers, Kotosh stands as a quiet monument to mystery and human ingenuity. It is a place where questions outweigh answers. How did a small community create such enduring sacred architecture? What beliefs guided their rituals? And what knowledge was encoded into the walls, floors, and carvings? What lies hidden beneath layers of clay, stone, and sediment, waiting to reveal insights into a civilization that predated most known Andean societies? And perhaps most compelling of all, what can the temple teach us about the timeless human impulse to connect with forces beyond the material world? In Kotosh, the echoes of hands crossed in reverence and devotion remind us that even millennia later, mystery endures, inviting reflection, discovery, and wonder. From the misty highlands of Kotosh, where crossed hands carved in clay whisper of ancient devotion, our journey now moves across the rugged valleys of Central Asia to the arid plains of western Tajikistan. Here, near the confluence of the Zaravshan and Pyanj rivers, lie the enigmatic architectural remains of Sarazm. The site spreads across low hills and terraces, its stone foundations and mud brick structures partially hidden beneath layers of soil and vegetation. At first glance, the ruins appear as fragmented outlines, walls, platforms, and courtyards arranged with a precision that hints at order, intention, and purpose. Yet, the more one observes, the more the scale and sophistication of this early settlement become apparent, and the deeper the mystery of how and why it was constructed. Sarazm is recognized as one of Central Asia's earliest urbanized settlements, dating back to around 3000 to 2500 BCE. Archaeological excavations have revealed substantial stone and mud brick constructions, workshops, storage areas, and defensive walls, suggesting a community capable of complex social organization and architectural planning. The presence of metallurgical evidence, including traces of copper smelting and small-scale bronze production, indicates that its inhabitants were not merely agriculturalists, but also skilled artisans and early industrialists. Yet the methods, knowledge, and cultural frameworks behind these achievements remain largely speculative. How did these early builders conceptualize and execute such durable structures in an environment that presented both climatic and geographic challenges? Walking among the terraces and excavated foundations, the careful layout of Sarazm becomes evident. Buildings are arranged along streets and courtyards, with certain spaces seemingly designated for ritual or communal activity. Some structures appear aligned with distant hills, river bends, or celestial events, suggesting that environmental observation and spatial planning were central to the site's design. Could these alignments reflect early cosmological or calendrical understanding, or were they purely functional, intended to manage water flow, sunlight, and human movement? The precision of planning implies a level of foresight, coordination, and technical skill that is difficult to replicate even today with minimal tools. The construction techniques themselves are equally intriguing. Walls constructed from mud brick and stone were designed to endure the harsh continental climate, from blistering summer heat to freezing winter winds. Foundations are often deep and compacted, terraces reinforced with retaining walls, and certain platforms suggest specialized functions, perhaps ceremonial, administrative, or industrial. How did the people of Sarazm develop these engineering methods without written manuals or formalized schooling? Were they learned through trial and error over generations, or guided by a codified system of knowledge now lost to time? Artifacts discovered within and around the architectural remains deepen the sense of mystery. Pottery, figurines, jewelry, and tools indicate a society with artistic, ritual, and economic complexity. Copper and bronze objects point to technological knowledge that allowed manipulation of metals in ways that were remarkably advanced for the period. How did such early societies organize labor, trade, and skill specialization to sustain urban life on this scale? Did the community function as an independent hub, or was it part of a larger network connecting distant regions through exchange of materials, knowledge, and cultural practices? Equally perplexing are features that resist simple explanation. Certain platforms and walls appear deliberately isolated or geometrically precise, yet their functional purpose is unclear. Some areas contain depressions or alignments that may have served ritual, astronomical, or symbolic functions, though no definitive interpretation has emerged. Could these elements have encoded early religious or cosmological beliefs, marking space in ways that integrated the natural landscape, human activity, and spiritual significance? And if so, what knowledge guided these choices, now invisible but once deeply understood by the community? The surrounding environment adds layers to the mystery. Sarazm sits on fertile floodplains fed by mountain rivers, yet the terrain also presents challenges. Seasonal flooding, erosion, and shifting river courses threaten structures over time. The inhabitants clearly understood and adapted to these conditions, constructing terraces, embankments, and drainage systems that suggest sophisticated environmental management. Could their architectural decisions have been informed not only by necessity, but by ritual, symbolism, or an early philosophy connecting human activity with the forces of nature? Standing among the excavated ruins, one is struck by the scale, organization, and ingenuity of Sarazm. Each wall, terrace, and platform represents not only physical labor but also knowledge, intention, and cultural meaning. The settlement challenges assumptions about the capabilities of early societies in Central Asia, demonstrating that even in remote regions, people achieved architectural, technological, and social sophistication that modern observers struggle to replicate. What social structures, belief systems, or leadership practices enabled this level of coordination? And why did Sarazm eventually decline, leaving only fragments for archaeologists to interpret? As the sun dips behind distant mountains, casting long shadows over terraces and courtyards, Sarazm remains a site of enduring fascination and unanswered questions. Its stone foundations, mud brick walls, and scattered artifacts evoke a civilization that balanced labor, ritual, and knowledge in ways that continue to intrigue modern researchers. How much of its original design, function, and meaning has been lost to time, natural erosion, and human activity? And what secrets remain buried beneath the earth, waiting to reveal more about the technological, cultural, and spiritual life of this ancient community? In the quiet of the Tajik landscape, Sarazm stands as a testament to human ingenuity and mystery. Each wall, each platform, each carefully aligned structure invites reflection on the capabilities of our ancestors and the knowledge that has slipped through the centuries. What remains hidden, and what might we learn if we continue to explore with patience, observation, and imagination? The site endures as a place where questions outweigh answers, and where the traces of human endeavor continue to inspire awe and wonder across millennia. From the windswept plains of Central Asia and the terraces of Sarazm, our journey now carries us across the Mediterranean to the sun-drenched island of Minorca in the Balearic Archipelago. Perched atop rolling hills and overlooking fertile valleys and distant coves, the Torre den Galmés Talayots rise silently against the horizon, their massive stone forms enduring the passage of millennia. At first sight, the structures appear deceptively simple: circular towers, thick walls, and scattered enclosures built from roughly hewn limestone. Yet as one walks among them, the scale, precision, and subtle complexity of their construction become unmistakable, revealing an architectural tradition both functional and enigmatic. Each stone seems to bear the weight of intention, labor, and a culture that has long since vanished. Torre den Galmés is among the largest Talayotic settlements in Minorca, dating back to around 1000 BCE, during a period when the Talayotic culture flourished across the Balearic Islands. These communities are known for their megalithic towers, or talayots, which are strategically placed across the landscape, often forming part of larger settlements with surrounding dwellings, courtyards, and ceremonial spaces. Archaeologists have suggested that talayots served multiple functions: defensive watchtowers, communal gathering points, or symbolic markers of territorial control. Yet despite centuries of study, the exact purpose of these structures, and the full meaning encoded in their layout, remains elusive. How did a society without written records conceptualize and coordinate the construction of such imposing stone edifices, and what knowledge guided their placement across hills, valleys, and coastlines? Walking through the remains of the settlement, the careful arrangement of towers, walls, and open spaces becomes apparent. The Talayots themselves are cylindrical, with thick stone walls enclosing interior chambers that may have served ritual, storage, or defensive purposes. Certain towers align with nearby hills, water sources, or other Talayots, hinting at an awareness of landscape, line of sight, and perhaps celestial patterns. Could these alignments have functioned as primitive calendars, navigational aids, or territorial markers? And if so, what observational knowledge enabled the Talayotic builders to translate landscape, horizon, and sky into enduring stone forms? The construction techniques reveal both skill and resourcefulness. Limestone blocks, carefully shaped and fitted without mortar, create walls that have withstood centuries of wind, rain, and seismic activity. Some Talayots contain interior corbelled chambers, a sophisticated method requiring precise calculation and craftsmanship. How did these communities, with limited tools, achieve such structural integrity? Were the techniques transmitted orally through generations, perfected through trial and error, or guided by ritualized knowledge that combined practical engineering with cultural or spiritual significance? The stones themselves suggest a fusion of function and meaning, a testament to a people capable of remarkable ingenuity. Archaeological evidence within the settlement deepens the intrigue. Excavations have revealed traces of domestic life, pottery fragments, hearths, tools, and animal bones, suggesting that Torre den Galmés was both a defensive stronghold and a lived-in community. Yet the presence of large open plazas, ceremonial enclosures, and the towering Talayots themselves indicate a level of social and symbolic organization beyond mere subsistence. How were labor, leadership, and ritual coordinated in these communities? Did the Talayots serve as focal points for communal gatherings, rites of passage, or displays of authority and identity? And if so, what cultural and spiritual systems underpinned these practices, now largely lost to time? The environment itself seems to have informed and inspired construction. Torre den Galmés is situated on a series of natural terraces, providing commanding views of the surrounding countryside, the Mediterranean coastline, and distant islands. Seasonal light, prevailing winds, and the contours of the hills may have been carefully considered, integrating environmental observation into both practical and symbolic design. Could these choices have encoded not only defensive and logistical considerations, but also cosmological or ritual significance? And what knowledge of astronomy, geography, or human behavior might have guided these ancient architects? Even aspects that appear purely functional provoke questions. Certain enclosures and platforms resist obvious explanation, and their size, shape, or placement suggests intentionality beyond practicality. Could some Talayots have served as ceremonial spaces, centers for feasts, or loci for astronomical observation? Are the distances and orientations between towers part of a larger integrated system of social, spiritual, or environmental knowledge that we are only beginning to glimpse? Each unanswered question reinforces the sense of mystery surrounding the Talayotic culture. Standing amid the weathered stones and terraces, one is struck by the combination of permanence and elusiveness. Torre den Galmés is a place where human ingenuity, observation, and cultural expression converge, yet the full meaning of that convergence remains hidden. Every stone, every chamber, and every line of sight is a remnant of intention, yet centuries of erosion, human activity, and lost traditions obscure the broader narrative. What insights into social organization, spiritual life, or environmental mastery lie encoded within these structures, waiting to be fully understood? As the afternoon sun illuminates the limestone towers, casting long shadows across terraces and courtyards. Torre d'un Galmés stands as a quiet monument to human endeavor and enduring mystery. It invites reflection on the capabilities of a society that, without writing or advanced tools, was able to organize, construct, and sustain settlements that continue to challenge modern understanding. How did these people balance daily life with ritual and defense? What knowledge has been lost to time, and what subtle clues remain for those willing to observe and wonder? The Talayots endure, silent and imposing, asking us to imagine the rhythms, beliefs, and ingenuity of a culture that shaped stone, landscape, and society in ways still difficult to replicate today. From the sun-baked hills and limestone towers of Menorca, our exploration now journeys across deserts and mountains to the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, where the arid landscape stretches into horizons of sand and stone. Here, hidden beneath the shifting dunes and jagged rocky outcrops, lie the enigmatic Khutm underground tombs. At first sight, the terrain appears forbidding and empty, a vast expanse of desert punctuated by low ridges and scattered boulders. Yet beneath the surface, the tombs tell a story of human ingenuity, ritual, and architectural sophistication that challenges both time and expectation. The entrances, carved directly into the rock, descend into chambers that have withstood centuries of temperature extremes, erosion, and the slow passage of time, preserving secrets of those who built them long before the modern era. Khutm is considered one of the most mysterious underground necropolises in the Arabian Peninsula, with origins difficult to pin down, but potentially dating back several millennia. Scholars have uncovered hundreds of rock-cut tombs, many featuring intricate passageways, vaulted chambers, and burial niches hewn with care. The tomb's scale and uniformity imply a highly organized effort, demanding not only technical skill, but also precise planning. How did the people of this desert landscape, without advanced machinery, shape the rock with such accuracy? How did they conceptualize subterranean spaces that would endure generations, while simultaneously serving as sacred repositories for the dead? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. Descending into the tombs, the sense of deliberate design becomes apparent. Long corridors lead into circular or rectangular chambers, with walls sometimes bearing faint carvings, patterns, or inscriptions. Certain chambers are oriented along cardinal directions, while others align with distant mountain peaks or seasonal sunrises, hinting at a complex understanding of geometry, astronomy, or ritual symbolism. Could these alignments reflect cosmological beliefs, guiding the spirits of the dead? Or were they intended to mark time, the cycles of seasons, or celestial events? And if so, what knowledge enabled these early architects to blend physical construction with metaphysical purpose? The construction methods themselves raise further intrigue. The tombs were carved directly into sandstone and limestone, yet the precision of the stone cutting, the smoothness of the walls, and the uniformity of burial niches suggest techniques difficult to replicate even today. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that similar results require meticulous planning, sustained labor, and a deep understanding of material properties. Did the builders possess lost tools, methods, or organizational systems that allowed such feats? And how were these techniques transmitted across generations without written manuals, relying instead on hands-on instruction, ritualized knowledge, or communal memory? Evidence from the tombs suggests a society with a complex social and spiritual structure. Artifacts recovered include pottery, personal adornments, and occasionally metal objects, indicating burial practices that reflect status, identity, and ritual observance. Yet, the placement of tombs within the necropolis defies simple explanation. Some clusters appear deliberately isolated, while others form larger networks connected by subterranean corridors. Could these spatial patterns reflect lineage, tribal organization, or ceremonial hierarchy? And if so, How did the builders encode such social information in stone and subterranean architecture? The underground environment itself adds layers to the mystery. Within the tombs, temperatures remain relatively stable despite the scorching heat above, suggesting an understanding, whether intentional or discovered empirically, of the insulating properties of rock. The tomb's orientation and depth may also have been chosen to protect against seasonal floods, sand accumulation, or seismic activity. How did these ancient architects conceptualize the subterranean space in relation to natural forces, and to what degree did their knowledge of geology influence ritual and practical design? The tombs seem to represent a sophisticated balance of human intention, environmental adaptation, and spiritual purpose. Some features resist conventional explanation. Certain chambers contain unusual niches or recessed alcoves whose function is unclear, and faint geometric carvings hint at symbolic or ritual meaning that is no longer interpretable. Could these elements have been used in rites as markers for celestial events, or as focal points for social gatherings of the living connected to the dead? The ambiguity invites speculation without resolution, creating a space where observation, inference, and imagination converge. What beliefs or cosmologies could have inspired the precise yet enigmatic layouts of these subterranean chambers? The scale of the necropolis also implies logistical and societal sophistication. Constructing hundreds of tombs over potentially vast stretches of desert required coordination, resource management, and sustained effort. How were labor, tools, and knowledge mobilized to achieve such consistency and durability? Did this project reflect the ambitions of a ruling class, the devotion of a community, or a combination of both? And what cultural or spiritual imperatives drove a society to invest so heavily in subterranean architecture for the dead rather than above-ground structures, which were more common elsewhere? Standing at the mouth of one tomb, looking down into the shadowed chamber, the sense of both scale and intimacy is striking. The tomb is silent, yet it speaks of generations of care, planning, and belief. Each carved wall, each burial niche, and each faint trace of ritual deposit is a record of human intent, labor, and reverence. How did these people view life, death, and the afterlife? And how did these views shape the extraordinary architecture of Khutm? Could there have been spiritual principles guiding the layout of the entire necropolis? Principles now lost to time but encoded in the very rock? Even today, the desert shifts around the tombs, sand and wind slowly reclaiming the structures, erasing traces of stairways, courtyards, and ancillary chambers. Yet the core architecture endures, challenging modern observers to reconstruct the methods, meanings, and cultural logic of its creators. What lies buried beneath layers of sediment and debris? Tombs yet undiscovered, artifacts yet unearthed, inscriptions yet unread. Each unanswered question deepens the allure of the site and underscores the limits of contemporary understanding. As the sun sets over the dunes, casting long shadows that stretch across the desert floor, Khutm emerges as a monument to both human ingenuity and enduring mystery. It is a place where technology, ritual, and social organization converge in stone, yet whose full significance remains elusive. Every chamber carved, every niche recessed, and every corridor tunneled into the rock is a testament to a society that understood not only material construction, but also the spiritual and symbolic dimensions of space. How much of their knowledge has been lost, and what can be recovered by patient observation and study? What hidden insights into life, death, and cultural sophistication remain buried beneath the sands, waiting for discovery? In Khutm, the silence of the desert amplifies the questions, and the shadows of the tombs seem to reach across centuries, reminding us that some of humanity's most profound achievements were designed not for permanence above ground, but to endure in the quiet, unseen depths. And in that quiet, The tombs continue to speak, to challenge, to intrigue, and to invite reflection on mysteries that remain, despite millennia of human curiosity, impossible to fully replicate. From the silent depths of Al-Khutm's underground tombs, where stone chambers concealed the beliefs of the dead, our journey now returns to the surface, yet not to clarity. Instead, it leads us to a long alpine valley in northern Italy, where the mountains themselves have become a vast and enduring archive. Val Camonica stretches between steep slopes and flowing rivers, its landscape shaped by glaciers, forests, and time. At first glance, it appears tranquil, even ordinary. But etched into thousands of exposed rock faces is one of the largest collections of prehistoric symbols in the world. Marks that transform the valley into a monumental canvas of human expression, intention, and unresolved mystery. Scattered across cliffs, boulders, and stone slabs are more than 300,000 engraved figures, carved over a span of nearly 8,000 years. These are not random scratches. They are deliberate images, human figures, animals, weapons, geometric patterns, spirals, grids, footprints, wheels, and scenes of hunting, combat, and ritual. Some are simple and stark, others astonishingly complex. Standing before them, one senses an overwhelming continuity, generation after generation returning to the same stones, adding new marks while preserving the old. Why this place? What compelled ancient peoples to repeatedly carve meaning into the same valley walls for millennia? Mainstream archaeology attributes the engravings primarily to the Comuni people, an Iron Age culture later encountered by the Romans. Through stylistic analysis and stratification, scholars have identified phases ranging from the Neolithic through the Bronze and Iron Ages. Many carvings appear to reflect daily life, agriculture, warfare, social hierarchy. Others may record rites of passage, territorial claims, or mythological narratives. Yet these explanations, while grounded in evidence, leave much unanswered. Why are certain symbols repeated obsessively across centuries, while others appear only once? And why do some images seem to defy practical interpretation altogether? Among the most perplexing are abstract symbols, grids, ladders, concentric circles, and figures that resemble maps or diagrams rather than scenes. Some researchers suggest these may represent early forms of symbolic language or proto-writing, systems of communication whose meaning is now lost. Others propose astronomical interpretations, noting that certain carvings appear aligned with solar events, mountain peaks, or seasonal changes. Could Val Camonica have functioned as a ritual calendar, a stone-based system for tracking time, seasons, or celestial cycles? And if so, how precise was the knowledge required to encode such information into rock? Equally intriguing is the sheer technical consistency of the engravings. The figures were created using stone tools, hammered repeatedly into the rock in a method known as pecking. Yet many carvings show remarkable control, proportion, and durability, surviving thousands of years of erosion, ice, and weather. How did ancient artisans achieve such longevity without metal tools or protective treatments? Was the technique itself ritualized, passed down through specialized lineages of carvers who understood not just how to carve, but where and why? Some rock panels are densely packed with overlapping images, while others are isolated and deliberately placed. This uneven distribution raises further questions. Were certain locations considered sacred, reserved for specific rites or social groups? Did the act of carving carry spiritual significance beyond the image itself? In some cases, newer carvings avoid damaging older ones, suggesting reverence for ancestral marks. In others, images overwrite or intersect, possibly signaling cultural shifts, conflict, or reinterpretation of meaning. Was Val Camonica a site of continuity, Or quiet transformation? More speculative interpretations emerge when patterns are examined at scale. A few researchers have suggested that clusters of symbols may encode complex narratives or knowledge systems, perhaps even cosmological models. Certain figures resemble human forms with exaggerated limbs or headgear, prompting debate over whether they represent shamans, deities, or symbolic states of consciousness. Others point to recurring motifs that resemble pathways, gates, or transitions, imagery that could relate to spiritual journeys rather than physical ones. While such ideas remain unproven, they persist because conventional explanations do not fully account for the depth, repetition, and abstraction present across the valley. There is also the question of sound and movement. Val Camonica's rock faces often sit near echoing slopes, flowing water, and natural amphitheaters. Some archaeologists have wondered whether carving sites were chosen not only for visibility, but for acoustics. Could rituals involving sound, chanting, or percussion have accompanied the creation of these symbols? Did the valley function as a multisensory landscape where image, sound, and environment merged into a shared experience now impossible to reconstruct? Despite decades of documentation, tracing, and analysis, no definitive key to Val Camonica's symbols has emerged. There is no Rosetta Stone, no written legend, no surviving oral tradition that explains their full meaning. Each figure is a fragment of intention separated from its context by time. And yet, taken together, they form something undeniable, a long, deliberate conversation between humans and stone, carried on across thousands of years. Standing before the carvings today, one feels both proximity and distance. The human figures are familiar, arms raised, weapons held, animals pursued, yet their purpose remains elusive. Were these images meant to be seen by many or by few? Were they messages to others, to ancestors, to deities, or to the future? And why did the practice eventually fade, leaving the valley silent except for the marks themselves? As light shifts across the alpine slopes and shadows pass over the engraved rock faces, the symbols of Val Camonica seem to change, emerging and receding with the sun. They resist final interpretation, inviting observation rather than conclusion. What knowledge, beliefs, or experiences once bound these images together? And how much of human symbolic thought, its origins, its purposes, remains locked within these stones, waiting not to be solved, but understood in a way we have not yet learned to achieve? Here, in this quiet valley of marks and meanings, the mystery does not demand answers. It endures, patiently, asking only that we continue to look. From the silent, symbol-laden cliffs of Val Camonica, where generations etched meaning into stone, our journey returns once more to the highlands of the Andes, where the wind carries echoes of ceremonies long past. Nestled near the fertile plains of the Cusco region in Peru lies Pikillaqta, an expansive Wari settlement whose temples and urban plan reveal a civilization both ambitious and enigmatic. Unlike the isolated carvings of Val Camonica, here the mystery is built in stone and earth, manifesting as sprawling enclosures, labyrinthine walls, and ceremonial platforms that speak of centralized authority, ritual practice, and architectural mastery. From a distance, the complex resembles a tightly knit grid of buildings. Up close, it reveals corridors, niches, and terraces crafted with precision, a language of space whose meaning is only partially understood. Pikillaqta flourished between approximately 600 and 1000 CE, during the height of the Wari civilization. Archaeologists have recognized it as a city designed not only for habitation but for governance, ceremony, and control over the surrounding valley. The temples at Pikillaqta, in particular, occupy central locations within the settlement, elevated slightly above surrounding residential sectors and oriented along precise axes, Their placement suggests more than convenience or defense. It indicates intentionality, a spatial choreography that may have guided the movements of priests, rulers, or pilgrims. But what dictated the orientation, scale, and configuration of these sacred spaces? And what spiritual, social, or cosmic principles governed the design of a complex this vast? The architectural techniques employed at Pikillaqta hint at extraordinary knowledge of construction, logistics, and material behavior. Adobe walls, fired bricks, and stone foundations were assembled with an understanding of load distribution, erosion, and seismic activity, enabling the structures to endure centuries of highland weather. Certain temples feature recessed niches and specialized platforms that may have held sacred objects or served as ritual stages. The precision of these features raises questions. How did Wari builders coordinate labor, knowledge, and religious protocol to create structures both functional and symbolic? Could there have been standardized methods of temple construction, transmitted orally or through apprenticeship, that encoded cultural, spiritual, and technical knowledge simultaneously? Walking through the temples today, one is struck by both uniformity and variation. Some enclosures are rectangular, simple, and utilitarian. Others are monumental, with multiple interconnected chambers, sunken floors, and carved stairways. The variety suggests a nuanced system of ritual and administration. Certain spaces may have been designed for large gatherings or feasts, while others seem restricted, perhaps reserved for the elite or the priesthood. Were the Wari expressing hierarchy, cosmology, or communal memory through the very layout of the temples? And if so, what principles of spatial symbolism guided decisions that remain undeciphered to modern eyes? Evidence within the temples points to complex ceremonial activity. Ceramic vessels, ritual figurines, and remnants of offerings have been found in niches, on terraces, and within hidden chambers. Some artifacts indicate trade and cultural exchange, suggesting that Pikillaqta was connected to distant Wari regions and perhaps even beyond. Yet, despite the quantity and quality of these findings, the precise rituals performed here remain speculative. Were these temples dedicated to agricultural cycles, astronomical observation, ancestor veneration, or a combination of practices? How were the rhythms of daily life intertwined with sacred time, and how did spatial organization reinforce cultural ideology? The environmental context deepens the intrigue. Pikillaqta occupies a valley that channels both wind and water, with nearby rivers and streams shaping agricultural terraces and influencing settlement patterns. The Wari appear to have understood the hydrology of the region, integrating water management into the urban and ceremonial plan. Could this knowledge have held spiritual significance, linking the physical manipulation of the landscape with ritual or cosmological beliefs? And how did the interplay of light, shadow, and mountain topography influence the experience of ritual participants within temple precincts? Certain platforms and corridors catch sunlight in ways that could mark specific times of year, suggesting intentional integration of celestial observation into the architecture itself. Despite meticulous study, much about Pikillaqta remains enigmatic. The organization of residential, administrative, and ceremonial zones implies governance on a scale that modern scholars struggle to fully comprehend. How were labor, materials, and construction sequences coordinated across a sprawling site in an era without mechanized tools or written blueprints? Did the temples serve primarily as centers of spiritual life, or were they instruments of social control, symbols of Wari authority designed to convey power and order across the population? And if so, how much of that knowledge, ritual, political, or technical, was codified in the structures themselves, waiting to be interpreted by those who could read the language of space? Some architectural features resist conventional explanation. Certain walls appear deliberately isolated, niches remain empty, and ceremonial spaces are difficult to reconcile with straightforward functional purposes. Were these anomalies the result of incomplete construction, symbolic intent, or design principles now lost to time? Perhaps the Wari were encoding complex ideas about cosmology, social hierarchy, or memory into these anomalies, leaving subtle clues for future generations, but intentionally shrouding their meaning in mystery. Standing amid the temples, the contrast between permanence and transience is palpable. Adobe walls, now eroded, and stone platforms endure, yet the knowledge of their precise function and ritual significance is fleeting, accessible only in fragments through artifacts and spatial analysis. How much of the Wari worldview, their understanding of the cosmos, and their social and spiritual organization remains hidden within these stones? Could careful observation, spatial modeling, or experimental archaeology ever bridge the gap between what they created and what we can comprehend today? As the highland sun moves across the terraces, casting elongated shadows through the corridors and platforms, Pikillaqta conveys both clarity and ambiguity. It is a city of human endeavor, structured with logic, intention, and ritual awareness, yet it resists complete understanding. Every wall, niche, and platform speaks of careful planning, yet each unanswered question reminds us of the distance between modern interpretation and ancient experience. How did the Wari perceive their world, and how did that perception guide their construction of temples that served as both spiritual centers and markers of human achievement? The Wari temples at Pikillaqta endure as silent witnesses to a civilization that mastered urban planning, religious architecture, and symbolic space long before the rise of the Inca. And yet, despite extensive excavation, study, and interpretation, the full meaning of these sacred structures remains elusive. The very precision, scale, and intentionality of the site continue to challenge our ability to replicate or fully comprehend it. What has been lost to time? What remains buried in unexcavated chambers? And what subtle knowledge lies encoded in the very layout of these temples? As shadows lengthen across the Andean Valley, Pikillaqta stands as a monument not only to Wari ingenuity, but to the enduring mystery of human ambition, ritual, and the search for meaning. A mystery that continues to invite observation, reflection, and wonder. From the high Andean terraces of Pikillaqta, where temples and walls whisper of ritual and authority, our journey now moves across the continent, descending into the arid deserts of northern Mexico. Here, amidst the rugged canyons and sun-baked plains of Chihuahua, lies Paquimé, an ancient settlement of extraordinary scale and ingenuity. At first glance, the adobe structures, multi-story buildings, expansive plazas, and communal spaces appear to be remnants of everyday life. Yet beneath their earthen surfaces, hidden in plain sight, flows a network of water channels, subterranean reservoirs, and irrigation conduits that speak of advanced engineering, environmental mastery, and an understanding of hydrology that continues to perplex researchers. The city, known also as Casas Grandes, is more than stone and adobe. It is an enduring testament to human ingenuity, adaptation, and mystery. Paquimé flourished between roughly 1200 and 1450 CE, at the heart of what is now northern Mexico, and it served as a cultural, commercial, and ceremonial hub for the region. The hidden water systems are among its most fascinating features. Unlike open aqueducts or obvious canals, the channels and cisterns are concealed beneath buildings and courtyards, flowing in precise directions, sometimes descending into underground chambers, and often emerging only where needed to sustain crops, animals, and human populations. How did the inhabitants conceive of such an integrated and covert water network? And how, in an arid and unpredictable environment, did they manage to supply a city of this size with a reliable and sustainable flow? Walking through Paquimé today, one is struck by the harmony between architecture and hydrology. The water channels are not only functional, they are woven seamlessly into the city's urban plan. Courtyards are designed to capture and direct rainwater, terraces guide flow through narrow channels, and stone-lined conduits protect the precious liquid from evaporation. Reservoirs, often hidden beneath plazas or within building foundations, demonstrate an understanding of water storage, pressure, and gravity. Could these systems have also held symbolic or ceremonial significance, linking the life-giving force of water to religious or social practice? And if so, how much of that knowledge was encoded in the city's very layout? The sophistication of the hidden systems is evident in their precision and durability. Excavations reveal channels meticulously constructed with stone, adobe, and mortar, capable of guiding water over uneven terrain and maintaining flow across long distances. Reservoirs are carefully compacted and lined to prevent leakage, with inlets and outlets that suggest control over quantity, pressure, and distribution. Such engineering implies not only practical knowledge, but also meticulous observation of local hydrology. How were these techniques transmitted across generations? Were they preserved as technical secrets, religious knowledge, or communal skills, now partially lost to time? And how did the builders ensure such systems could endure floods, droughts, and seasonal shifts over decades? Paquimé's water management is closely intertwined with its social and ceremonial architecture. Some channels flow directly beneath temples, plazas, and large communal rooms, suggesting a symbolic as well as practical function. Water may have played a central role in ritual practice, connecting the material and spiritual worlds in ways we cannot fully reconstruct. Certain channels terminate in areas that seem designed for ritual baths, ceremonial offerings, or purification rites. Could the hidden flow of water have mirrored the hidden power of priestly or elite authority, shaping both everyday survival and spiritual life? How was knowledge of the network restricted, shared, or ritualized, and what cultural or spiritual logic guided its design? Even more enigmatic are the subterranean conduits that remain partially unexplored. Archaeologists have documented multiple tunnels and channels, yet the full extent of the system is unknown. Some conduits appear to connect distant sectors of the city, while others descend into underground chambers whose purpose is still debated. Were these simply practical solutions to water distribution, or did they also serve as secret passages, ceremonial pathways, or symbolic representations of subterranean worlds? The duality of function and meaning invites reflection. How often in human history has practical technology been inseparable from spiritual or social significance? Lies in a region with variable rainfall, extreme heat, and shifting river courses. Yet the hidden systems enabled a thriving urban center capable of supporting agriculture, livestock, and dense populations. The inhabitants understood seasonal variation, soil absorption, and hydraulic behavior, adapting their engineering to local conditions. Could this knowledge have been guided purely by observation and trial, or was there a codified understanding of hydrology, mathematics, and environmental adaptation that has since been lost? How did a society without written manuals achieve such precision, efficiency, and sustainability? Artifacts associated with water use further deepen the mystery. Ceramics, grinding stones, and ritual objects are found along channels, suggesting that water was not only essential for survival, but also integrated into spiritual and social life. Certain reservoirs may have served as ceremonial focal points, while others were strictly utilitarian. Could the design of channels and cisterns reflect an early understanding of urban planning principles, water conservation, or even communal governance? And what does it reveal about the cultural priorities of the people who built and maintained them? Despite decades of study, many questions about Paquimé's hidden water systems remain unresolved. How was knowledge of the intricate network organized and transmitted? How did the builders calculate gradients, flows, and storage capacities with such precision without modern surveying tools? And how much of the city's water infrastructure remains undiscovered, buried beneath centuries of sediment and collapsed architecture? Each unanswered question underscores the ingenuity of the civilization while reinforcing its inscrutable nature. Walking along the sunlit terraces and shadowed corridors of Paquimé, one is struck by the interplay of visible and hidden, of architecture and technology, of necessity and symbolism. The city is a monument not only to human skill, but also to human foresight and adaptation, a place where water, essential yet invisible, shapes both the landscape and the imagination. How many secrets of design, engineering, and ritual remain encoded in its buried channels, waiting for patient observation to reveal them? How much of the knowledge that sustained a thriving civilization in an unforgiving environment has been lost to time? As the afternoon light dances across adobe walls and stone-lined conduits, the hidden water systems of Paquimé continue to evoke wonder. They remind us that human ingenuity often manifests in ways that are subtle, concealed, and difficult to replicate. Every channel, cistern, and subterranean passage is a testament to observation, labor, and ingenuity. Yet the full extent of understanding remains tantalizingly out of reach. And so, in the quiet of the desert, beneath the sun-baked floors of plazas and homes, the water continues to flow, silent, enduring, and enigmatic, inviting us to reflect on mysteries that endure, despite centuries of curiosity, excavation, and study. From the arid deserts of northern Mexico and the hidden waters of Paquimé, our journey now sweeps across continents and millennia to the heart of Mesopotamia, where the cradle of civilization rises in layers of clay and memory. Amid the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers stands the Ziggurat of Dur-Kurigalzu, a monumental structure of baked brick and mud, rising like a silent sentinel over the surrounding landscape. From a distance, its tiered form dominates the horizon, each successive level narrowing toward the sky. The sun casting long shadows that emphasize the sheer scale and geometric precision of the edifice. At once, architectural marvel and sacred symbol, the ziggurat invites both admiration and curiosity. How, in an age before cranes or iron tools, did the builders conceive, organize, and execute such a feat? Dur-Kurigalzu dates to approximately 1400 BCE, attributed to the Kassite dynasty that ruled Babylonia. It was conceived as a temple complex, a residence for gods on earth, and a ceremonial heart of the city. The ziggurat itself is a massive multi-tiered platform, originally rising perhaps 7 stories high, with internal chambers, ramps, and stairways leading toward shrines at its summit. Archaeologists have long debated the practical and symbolic purposes of such structures. Were ziggurats intended primarily as temples, as political symbols, or as instruments to manipulate the imagination of a population, drawing eyes and thoughts upward? Perhaps all three. And yet, despite centuries of study, many aspects of Dur-Kurigalzu remain inexplicably sophisticated, suggesting knowledge of geometry, engineering, and spatial perception that seems advanced even by today's standards. Approaching the base of the ziggurat, one is struck by the precision of its brickwork. The builders used kiln-fired bricks bonded with bitumen, creating walls capable of withstanding earthquakes, seasonal floods, and centuries of erosion. Some bricks bear inscriptions, signatures, or symbolic motifs, hinting at both ritual and administrative significance. How was this level of technical consistency achieved across thousands of individual bricks, each placed by hand? How did the Kassites organize labor, ensure structural integrity, and plan a monument whose complexity would challenge any modern engineer. The sheer scale suggests coordinated effort at a societal level, raising questions about political organization, knowledge transmission, and the role of sacred architecture in social cohesion. The layout of the ziggurat reveals both practical foresight and symbolic intention. Terraces rise in successive layers, each providing not only stability but also vantage points and ceremonial pathways. Ramps and staircases direct movement upward, guiding processions of priests, worshippers, and possibly rulers themselves. Certain walls align with cardinal directions, and some scholars have suggested that astronomical observation, tracking solstices, equinoxes, or planetary cycles, may have influenced orientation. Could the ziggurat have functioned as a celestial observatory, a terrestrial map of the heavens, or a ritual stage where cosmology and politics intertwined? If so, what observational skills, planning, and measurement systems did the Kassites possess to achieve such integration? Artifacts discovered within the complex offer tantalizing glimpses into its use, but raise further questions. Ceramics, votive offerings, and inscriptions indicate religious and ceremonial activity, while structural features suggest administrative and possibly residential functions. Certain chambers and platforms remain enigmatic, their purpose undeciphered despite extensive excavation. Were these spaces used for initiation rites, divination, or clandestine gatherings of the elite? Were they designed to encode knowledge, law, or celestial patterns in ways we cannot yet read? Each artifact, each architectural nuance, invites speculation without providing definitive answers. The environmental context of Dur-Kurigalzu adds another layer of mystery. Situated near the Euphrates, the ziggurat's builders had to contend with seasonal flooding, shifting river courses, and the harsh climate of Mesopotamia. The engineering solutions they devised, terracing, drainage systems, elevated foundations, reflect both observation and experimentation, a deep understanding of environmental constraints, and an ability to manipulate them without modern tools. How did they anticipate centuries of environmental change, and how did those considerations influence the shape, placement, and longevity of the structure? Could the ziggurat itself encode knowledge of hydrology, astronomy, or social order, embedded within its very form? Beyond the technical marvels lies an even more profound mystery: the interplay of architecture, ritual, and perception. Standing before the ziggurat, it is impossible not to consider its effect on those who first approached it. The sheer height, the imposing terraces, and the carefully orchestrated pathways guide not just movement, but thought, perception, and reverence. Did the Kassites intend to inspire awe, obedience, or spiritual contemplation, or all three simultaneously? And how much of their intent is lost to us, leaving only the physical form to suggest meaning without fully revealing it? Certain features of Dur-Kurigalzu resist conventional interpretation. Rooms and platforms whose function is unclear, stairways that lead to nowhere, and walls that appear symbolic rather than structural hint at an architectural language we have only partially deciphered. Could these anomalies reflect ritual secrecy, political theater, or encoded knowledge of celestial or environmental cycles? And if so, how were these design principles communicated across generations without written manuals, using only apprenticeship, ritual practice, and communal memory? The ziggurat also invites reflection on the broader Kassite civilization. How did a relatively obscure dynasty maintain sufficient control, resources, and technical skill to construct such enduring monuments? What role did religion, power, and urban planning play in uniting people around such grand projects? And how much of the society's knowledge, mathematical, astronomical, spiritual, or administrative, is hidden in plain sight within the layers of clay, brick, and bitumen? As the sun moves across the Mesopotamian plains, shadows cast by the terraces shift slowly, emphasizing the monument's geometric clarity and monumental presence. The ziggurat is both enduring and elusive, a structure whose form and function continue to challenge modern understanding. Every brick, every terrace, and every alignment is a testament to human skill, observation, and imagination. But the full depth of that achievement remains just beyond reach. How did the Kassites translate abstract cosmology, political authority, and ritual practice into stone and mud with such precision? What secrets of organization, observation, and cultural intent are encoded in the very proportions and orientation of the ziggurat? Standing at its base, one is struck by a paradox. Dur-Kurigalzu is at once comprehensible and inscrutable. Its geometry, brickwork, and alignment speak to rationality, planning, and mastery of materials. Yet the cultural, spiritual, and symbolic dimensions, the rituals, beliefs, and worldviews that gave the structure meaning, remain largely hidden. How much of the ziggurat's purpose was practical, how much ceremonial, and how much intentionally opaque? Could modern analysis ever fully recover the thought processes and intentions of those who designed it, or is some knowledge destined to remain irretrievably lost, encoded only in the silent permanence of the clay? Even today, the ziggurat exerts influence on the imagination. Its massive terraces rise like layers of time, its shadows stretch across the plains, and its presence reminds us that human ambition, creativity, and ritual can shape the landscape in ways that endure far beyond the lives of those who created them. What mysteries lie within its inner chambers, in bricks still unexamined, or in alignments unnoticed? How much of ancient Mesopotamian knowledge, astronomical, mathematical, spiritual, or social, remains encrypted within its tiers? And how does a single structure, preserved across centuries, continue to challenge our assumptions about the limits of human ingenuity and the mysteries that civilizations can leave behind? The Ziggurat of Dur-Kurigalzu, towering and silent, invites both reflection and wonder. It is a monument to the power of architecture to embody knowledge, belief, and social order, yet it is also a puzzle that resists full comprehension. Its layers of clay and brick, its terraces and chambers, and its precise orientation all speak of purpose, skill, and vision. And yet, the deeper meaning, the interplay of ritual, authority, and cosmology, remains elusive, urging us to ponder what has been lost, what can still be discovered, and what, perhaps, is destined to remain a mystery, impossible to fully replicate even in our own age. From the monumental terraces of Dur-Kurigalzu, where human ambition reached for the heavens in layers of baked brick and mud, our journey now shifts eastward, across deserts and plains, to the sun-baked lands of western India. Here, amidst the arid expanses of the Rann of Kutch, lies Dholavira, one of the most extraordinary urban centers of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. While its citadel, streets, and ceremonial spaces capture attention, it is the city's sophisticated reservoir system that continues to astonish archaeologists and engineers alike. Hidden in plain sight, these waterworks reveal an unparalleled understanding of hydrology, urban planning, and environmental adaptation, an ingenuity that seems impossible to replicate even in modern times. Dholavira thrived between approximately 2600 and 1900 BCE, a period when large settlements along the Indus River system were developing unprecedented levels of social organization. Unlike the open aqueducts and cisterns of later civilizations, Dholavira's reservoirs were ingeniously integrated into the urban grid, capturing seasonal rainfall, storing it, and distributing it efficiently throughout the city. At first glance, the structures appeared deceptively simple, rectangular basins carved into the bedrock, lined with precisely cut stone blocks, connected by channels whose gradient and alignment reflect careful observation of water flow. Yet, upon closer inspection, the sophistication of the system becomes evident. How did an ancient civilization, lacking modern surveying tools, achieve such precision and efficiency? How did they ensure that thousands of residents could rely on these reservoirs in a region prone to drought and erratic rainfall? Walking among the ruins today, one is struck by the seamless integration of the reservoirs into the city's overall layout. Water was not merely functional. It defined the urban experience, shaping streets, residential quarters, and public spaces. The largest reservoir, situated near the central citadel, could have contained hundreds of thousands of liters of water, serving both practical and symbolic purposes. Smaller, interconnected tanks collected runoff from roofs and courtyards, channeling it toward public and private sectors. Could these interconnected reservoirs have served a ritual function as well as a practical one, reflecting the Indus civilization's understanding of water as both life-giving and sacred? Were the flows choreographed not only for survival, but also to reinforce social or spiritual hierarchy? The engineering precision of Dholavira's waterworks is striking. The channels and stone masonry exhibit careful attention to gradient and impermeability, demonstrating awareness of hydraulics that rivals later civilizations. Overflow channels, sediment traps, and filtering basins suggest a system designed for durability, maintenance, and adaptability to seasonal variation. How did the inhabitants determine optimal slopes, flow rates, and storage volumes without standardized measurements? Were these calculations based on empirical observation, inherited knowledge, or experimental techniques passed down through generations? And what social structures supported the construction and maintenance of such a complex system over decades? Dholavira's reservoirs also invite speculation about climate and environmental awareness. The city's location in an arid region required meticulous planning to survive seasonal scarcity. Stone-lined channels, catchment basins, and reservoirs indicate that the builders understood local rainfall patterns, groundwater behavior, and evaporation rates. Did they monitor hydrological cycles with the same meticulous attention given to urban construction and trade? Could these waterworks represent not only technological skill, but also an early form of environmental management, integrating natural rhythms into urban design? And how much of that knowledge, once critical to survival, has been lost to time? The symbolic dimensions of the reservoirs are equally compelling. Some basins lie adjacent to ceremonial platforms, while others are aligned with streets and citadel entrances, suggesting deliberate spatial relationships. Water may have marked transitions between sacred and civic spaces, guiding inhabitants and visitors through both practical and symbolic experiences. Were the reservoirs themselves ritual objects, reflecting beliefs about purification, fertility, or cosmology? Or were they purely functional, their placement dictated by engineering necessity, with any ceremonial significance emerging later in social practice? The line between practicality and ritual is tantalizingly blurred, leaving modern observers to wonder whether the reservoirs were simultaneously pragmatic, symbolic, and authoritative. In addition to technical and symbolic aspects, the scale of the Dholavira system is remarkable. 5 massive reservoirs, dozens of smaller interconnected tanks, and a network of channels collectively formed a water infrastructure capable of sustaining a city with tens of thousands of inhabitants. Maintaining such a system required coordination, labor, and knowledge management. Who oversaw construction, maintenance, and seasonal adjustments? Were there specialized water engineers, priests, or administrators whose expertise ensured continuity? How was knowledge transmitted, preserved, and protected across generations, particularly in a society with no deciphered writing system to record technical instructions? Archaeological evidence also reveals adaptation and resilience. Reservoirs show signs of repair, reconstruction, and modification, suggesting ongoing observation and response to environmental challenges. Stone blocks were replaced, channels redirected, and sediment removed, reflecting a continuous engagement with natural processes. How much of this resilience was planned versus emergent, and how did it shape social organization, labor allocation, and communal priorities? Could the design principles of Dholavira's reservoirs offer insight into human ingenuity in the face of scarcity, a lesson increasingly relevant in our own era? Even more mysterious are features of the system that defy easy interpretation. Some basins are unusually deep, some channels terminate abruptly, and some structures appear oversized relative to the surrounding streets. Were these anomalies functional, ceremonial, or symbolic? Could certain reservoirs have served secretive purposes, storing water for elite households, ritual use, or defensive contingencies? And what stories, beliefs, or technical principles are encoded in the dimensions, orientation, and interconnection of these tanks, waiting to be understood? As sunlight glances across the stone-lined basins, the precision, scale, and integration of Dholavira's water system become increasingly striking. The city is a monument to practical knowledge, technical skill, and environmental foresight. Yet its full meaning remains obscured by time. How did the Indus engineers integrate hydraulic, social, and possibly ritual imperatives into a coherent system? How much knowledge was lost when Dholavira was abandoned, leaving stone tanks and channels as silent witnesses to ingenuity we cannot fully replicate? And how did a civilization without mechanized tools, standardized measurements, or written manuals conceive, construct, and maintain an infrastructure of such sophistication? Standing amidst the ruins today, one feels a profound tension between visibility and concealment, simplicity and complexity. The reservoirs are both obvious and enigmatic, easily recognized as functional waterworks, yet impossible to fully comprehend in scope and design. Every channel, tank, and spillway hints at technical reasoning, yet also suggests intentionality and foresight that extend beyond survival into the realm of cultural expression. How much of the city's knowledge was encoded in stone? How much remains buried, waiting to be revealed? And how much of Dholavira's ingenuity is destined to remain a puzzle, impossible to fully reproduce even with modern engineering and scientific tools? The Dholavira reservoirs remind us that the most profound human achievements often operate quietly, hidden beneath daily life, subtly shaping experience and survival. They endure as evidence of observation, experimentation, and environmental mastery, yet they resist complete understanding. How did the Indus people merge function, innovation, and possibly ritual into a system that could sustain a city in a challenging landscape? And ultimately, what has been lost? Knowledge of technique, principle, or intention that makes the reservoirs impossible to replicate in full even thousands of years later. Here, in the sun-baked plains of Gujarat, the waters of Dholavira flow through channels, pools, and tanks that have survived millennia, silent and patient. They invite reflection not only on the brilliance of their builders, but on the enduring mysteries of human innovation, how necessity, observation, and imagination converge to create structures whose complexity and insight remain just beyond our reach, calling us to wonder, investigate, and marvel. From the sun-baked plains of Gujarat and the intricate reservoirs of Dholavira, our journey now carries us northwest, across seas and centuries, to the windswept shores of Orkney, Scotland. Here, amidst rolling grasslands, rocky coastlines, and relentless Atlantic gales, lies Skara Brae, a settlement so remarkably preserved that it offers an almost intimate glimpse into Neolithic life. Buried beneath the shifting sands for millennia, its stone houses emerge like silent whispers from the earth, their low, thick walls protecting a complex of interconnected dwellings, hearths, and storage spaces. Standing amid these structures, one is immediately struck by the sense of order, craftsmanship, and subtle sophistication that challenges conventional notions of prehistoric societies. Skara Brae was occupied between roughly 3180 BCE and 2500 BCE, long before written records and monumental architecture of the kind found in Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley. Yet the settlement demonstrates a remarkable level of planning, social coordination, and technical understanding. 8 clustered dwellings connected by covered passageways suggest both communal living and careful attention to environmental conditions. Each house contains built-in furniture, storage bins, and stone hearths, indicating that daily life was structured, functional, and efficient. How did a Neolithic community, lacking metal tools, wheels, or formal mathematics, achieve such precision? How did they integrate domestic necessity with architectural consistency, creating a village that remains coherent, legible, and unexpectedly sophisticated after more than 5,000 years? The preservation of Skara Brae is itself extraordinary. Buried by sandstorms and protected from the harsh Orkney weather, the settlement offers a window into domestic life rarely afforded by other Neolithic sites. Stone beds, dressers, and storage boxes survive almost intact, each carefully shaped and fitted into the low, curved walls. The craftsmanship raises questions about skill transmission and labor organization. How were knowledge, technique, and social norms encoded in stone? Were these houses built according to individual preference, or did they follow standardized patterns, reflecting a shared cultural understanding of space, functionality, and aesthetic order? And what does the uniformity, combined with subtle variation, tell us about the balance between individuality and community in this prehistoric society? The spatial organization of Skara Brae further deepens the mystery. Passageways between homes suggest deliberate design, not mere convenience. Covered corridors protect against the wind while providing discrete connections between dwellings, facilitating communal interaction without sacrificing privacy. Hearths occupy central positions in each home, their placement suggesting an understanding of heat distribution and social gathering points. Some structures contain multiple hearths, unusual for a village of this scale. Were these designed for ritual purposes, food preparation, or as indicators of social status within a small community? Could the subtle variations in layout hint at unspoken rules of hierarchy, kinship, or ritual behavior encoded in stone but invisible to the modern observer? Artifacts recovered from Skara Brae provide glimpses of daily life while amplifying the enigma. Tools fashioned from bone, antler, and stone indicate specialized labor. Fishing, weaving, and food preparation all required significant skill. Personal adornments, ornaments, and items of apparent aesthetic or ritual value suggest a community attentive not only to survival, but to symbolic expression. Yet despite extensive excavation, many questions remain unanswered. How did the community acquire the raw materials needed for such craftsmanship? Were they entirely self-sufficient, or did they maintain trade networks with distant settlements? And how was knowledge, technical, practical, and possibly spiritual, transmitted and preserved in the absence of written language? Environmental adaptation is central to understanding Skara Brae. Situated in a harsh, windy, and exposed location, the settlement demonstrates a nuanced comprehension of climate, resource availability, and construction technique. Walls are thick, beds are low, and interiors are compact, all designed to retain heat and shield inhabitants from the elements. Drainage systems, evident in carefully carved channels and stone troughs, suggest foresight in managing water flow during storms and high tides. Could these engineering solutions have been passed down through generations as practical wisdom encoded in communal memory? And, intriguingly, do they hint at early experimentation with environmental planning, anticipating principles that would not be formalized until millennia later? The orientation and alignment of the dwellings add another layer of mystery. Many homes face south or southeast, capturing maximum sunlight while minimizing exposure to the harshest winds. Could these orientations also reflect ritual or cosmological considerations, integrating solar patterns into the rhythm of daily life? Were certain houses reserved for specific families, statuses, or ceremonial purposes, with orientation and design signaling social organization or spiritual intent? And how much of this intentionality is evident in the archaeological record versus what remains hidden, interpreted only through conjecture informed by subtle architectural cues? Even more enigmatic are the communal aspects of the settlement. Passageways, shared walls, and spatial clustering suggest a society that balanced collective need with private space. Yet the extent of social hierarchy, ritual practice, and governance remains largely unknown. How did such a small community manage labor, resource allocation, and conflict resolution? Were social norms embedded in the architecture itself, communicated through spatial logic rather than written law? Could the village's compact design have served not only practical needs but also social cohesion, reinforcing patterns of behavior, cooperation, and ritual observance? Archaeologists continue to debate certain structural features. Some homes contain multiple storage units, mysterious alcoves, or unusual hearth arrangements that defy straightforward functional explanation. Were these spaces purely domestic, or did they hold ritual, symbolic, or even defensive significance? Could some elements have encoded ancestral knowledge, spiritual practice, or seasonal observation, leaving traces of cultural logic hidden in stone? And if so, what else might lie undiscovered beneath the layers of sand and soil, waiting to be revealed as we refine excavation techniques and interpretive frameworks? As the Orkney wind sweeps across the remains, Skara Brae evokes both the ordinariness of domestic life and the extraordinary achievement of prehistoric human ingenuity. The village demonstrates that even in remote, pre-literate societies, people were capable of sophisticated planning, architectural consistency, and environmental adaptation. Yet, just as the stone beds and hearths speak clearly of daily routine, they whisper of mysteries lost to time, beliefs, rituals, and social structures that remain intangible, accessible only through inference and imagination. What subtleties of community life, technical skill, and ritual practice were encoded in these walls, and how might we ever fully understand them? Standing amidst the cluster of stone houses, it is impossible not to reflect on the paradox of Skara Brae, a settlement simultaneously visible and secretive, simple and complex, functional and enigmatic. Each wall, passage, and hearth demonstrates observation, planning, and skill. Yet the deeper purpose, social hierarchy, ritual expression, or symbolic communication, remains elusive. How much of human ingenuity is preserved in physical form, waiting to be deciphered, and how much is forever lost, encoded in memory and practice that disappeared when the sand reclaimed the village? Skara Brae also invites broader reflection on human adaptability and resilience. The inhabitants of Orkney survived in a challenging environment, integrating architecture, material culture, and environmental knowledge into a cohesive urban plan. They manipulated stone, earth, and space to create shelter, storage, and communal infrastructure, all without metal tools or written records. How many techniques, insights, and practices did they develop that we cannot replicate today? How did their understanding of human need, environmental constraint, and social cohesion shape a settlement whose clarity and coherence endure millennia later? Even today, as the wind sweeps through passageways and sunlight illuminates the stone beds and dressers, Skara Brae maintains an aura of quiet mystery. The village reminds us that human societies, even in the distant past, were capable of sophistication, observation, and ingenuity that challenges our assumptions. Yet, for all that is visible and measurable, much remains hidden. What subtleties of Neolithic life are preserved only in the spatial logic of dwellings, the orientation of walls, or the integration of domestic and communal space? How much knowledge, technical, social, or spiritual, remains encoded in stone beyond our ability to fully comprehend? In the end, Skara Brae endures as both a human achievement and a mystery. Its walls, passageways, and stone furniture speak to ingenuity, adaptation, and care. Yet they also hint at knowledge, belief, and practice that has been lost to the ages. How did this small community balance survival, social cohesion, and ritual expression in a way that produced architecture so precise, durable, and sophisticated? And what secrets remain hidden beneath the sands and stones, waiting for patient observation, careful excavation, and thoughtful interpretation to reveal what cannot yet be fully explained or replicated in our own time? Here, on the windswept shores of Orkney, Skara Brae stands as a testament to human creativity, resilience, and mystery, a village frozen in time, inviting us to wonder at the skill, knowledge, and imagination required to build a community that continues to defy full understanding, even after thousands of years. From the windswept stone houses of Skara Brae, where Neolithic ingenuity reveals the delicate balance between survival, social organization, and environmental adaptation, our journey now crosses oceans and centuries to the Andean highlands of Peru. Nestled in a verdant valley framed by steep mountains, the town of Ollantaytambo reveals a different, yet equally mesmerizing kind of human mastery. Massive terraces, precisely fitted stones, and imposing walls that have resisted both time and seismic upheaval. Rising above the modern village, the Ollantaytambo Walls stand as silent witnesses to an ancient civilization whose engineering, architectural sophistication, and strategic foresight continue to challenge our understanding of what was possible in the pre-Columbian Andes. Approaching the site, the first impression is one of sheer scale and presence. Enormous blocks of granite, some weighing dozens of tons, are fitted together with astonishing precision, their irregular shapes interlocking so tightly that not even a knife blade can be inserted between them. The walls zigzag upward along steep hillsides, creating terraces that serve both practical and defensive purposes. Viewed from below, the stones appear almost alive, as if shaped by forces beyond human hands, their contours and alignment evoking a sense of deliberate artistry combined with pragmatic design. How did ancient masons cut, transport, and position stones of such magnitude without iron tools, pulleys, or wheeled vehicles? What knowledge of geometry, leverage, and material strength allowed them to create structures that have endured earthquakes and centuries of erosion? The historical context of Ollantaytambo adds further intrigue. The site was a stronghold of the Inca Empire, strategically located along the Urubamba River to control access to the Sacred Valley. It functioned as both a ceremonial center and a military fortress, blending political authority with ritual significance. Yet the walls themselves, predating much of the Inca occupation in their lower courses, suggest layers of construction spanning generations. Were these early foundations laid by an earlier culture, later incorporated into Inca fortifications? Or is the site a continuous expression of Andean engineering knowledge passed down and refined over centuries? And what principles guided the selection, transport, and placement of each stone in a landscape that challenges even modern construction techniques? The terraces and walls at Ollantaytambo are not merely impressive for their scale. They reveal an understanding of stability, hydraulics, and seismic adaptation. Stones are carefully interlocked, angled, and placed to resist slippage, with terraces acting as both agricultural platforms and structural reinforcement. Channels carved into terraces suggest careful management of rainfall and runoff, protecting walls from erosion while sustaining crops. Could these dual-purpose constructions reflect a sophisticated integration of environmental awareness and architectural innovation? How did the builders determine optimal stone placement, slope, and gradient without standardized measurement tools, relying instead on observation, experience, and perhaps intuition honed over generations? Beyond the technical marvels lies a symbolic dimension that deepens the mystery. The walls zigzag across the hillside in seemingly intentional patterns, creating terraces that guide movement, frame vistas, and control sightlines. Some blocks bear subtle carvings or notches whose purpose remains debated, ritual, practical, or perhaps a combination of both. Could the walls themselves have functioned as markers of power, sacred geometry, or cosmological reference points? Were they designed to communicate authority, to inspire awe, or to encode knowledge about astronomy, agriculture, or water management? And how much of this intentionality is visible to modern observers versus hidden in the subtle relationships between stone, terrain, and light? The logistics of construction continue to fascinate and perplex researchers. Some stones are quarried several kilometers away, requiring transportation over rugged terrain and steep inclines. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated the difficulty of moving even moderately sized blocks using pre-Columbian technology, yet the largest stones at Ollantaytambo defy replication even with contemporary understanding of physics and human labor. What methods allowed the Inca or earlier builders to maneuver such massive stones with apparent ease? Did they employ sophisticated mechanical techniques now lost to history, or were their social and organizational structures capable of mobilizing labor on an unprecedented scale? Ollantaytambo also invites speculation about ritual and urban planning. The terraces lead to ceremonial spaces and plazas, indicating careful integration of defensive, agricultural, and spiritual functions. Each level, each platform, seems to serve multiple purposes, harmonizing practical necessity with symbolic expression. Were the walls themselves conceived as part of a narrative, telling stories of ancestry, authority, or cosmology in stone? Could their precise alignment reflect astronomical knowledge, tracking solstices, equinoxes, or star patterns essential for agricultural or ceremonial purposes? And if so, how much of this knowledge has been preserved in the stones themselves, encoded for those able to read its subtle cues? Even more enigmatic are certain features of the site that resist straightforward interpretation. Some walls rise at angles that appear impractical for construction, while others terminate in abrupt notches or terraces without obvious function. Were these design choices intentional, serving symbolic, defensive, or engineering purposes? Could hidden chambers or foundations lie behind the walls, their purpose forgotten but preserved in structural clues? And how much of Ollantaytambo's ingenuity was designed to be understood only by a select few, embedding knowledge within stone, geometry, and placement rather than through written record? Environmental integration is another striking aspect of Ollantaytambo. The walls and terraces adapt seamlessly to the natural slope of the Andes, respecting contours while imposing order. This interaction between landscape and construction reflects not only technical skill, but also a philosophical understanding of human habitation within the environment. Were the builders guided by spiritual principles that emphasized harmony with nature, or purely pragmatic considerations of stability, defense, and agriculture? And how did this integration inform the daily lives of those who lived, worked, and worshipped amidst these massive stone walls? Even after centuries of study, the site continues to challenge assumptions. The precision of stone cutting, the magnitude of labor, and the integration of functional, defensive, and ceremonial design remain difficult to reconcile with what we know of pre-Columbian technology. Could there have been methods, tools, or organizational strategies now lost? Or was human ingenuity simply capable of achieving feats that modern observers struggle to replicate? And what does this tell us about the limits of historical interpretation? How much can we truly understand of an ancient mind, and how much remains tantalizingly just out of reach? As sunlight shifts across the terraces, shadows accentuate the intricate interlocking of stones, highlighting both technical mastery and artistic subtlety. The walls convey permanence and resilience, standing firm against seismic activity, erosion, and human activity for centuries. And yet, their purpose, construction methods, and the social systems that enabled such labor remain partly veiled in mystery. How did the builders translate abstract planning, material knowledge, and social organization into a structure capable of enduring for so long? And what other secrets might remain hidden, encoded in angles, notches, or the relationships between individual stones? The Ollantaytambo Walls remind us that architecture can serve as both a practical and symbolic conduit, shaping human activity while encoding cultural knowledge. Their magnitude and precision speak to technical skill, labor organization, and environmental mastery, yet they also provoke questions about intention, ritual, and the ways in which a civilization communicates authority and belief through material form. How much of what we see reflects functional necessity, and how much was designed to inspire, impress, or convey hidden knowledge? And how many lessons, engineering, social, or spiritual, remain unrecognized, preserved in stone, but invisible to those who cannot decipher its language? Standing at the base of the terraces, one cannot help but feel the weight of time and human effort. The walls rise like frozen waves, a testament to labor, vision, and ingenuity that defies easy explanation. Their presence urges reflection on the scope of human capability, how societies organize, observe, experiment, and manipulate their environment to create structures that endure far beyond their own lifespan. And as we trace the contours of these massive stones, we are reminded that for all we have learned, Ollantaytambo retains its power to perplex, inspire, and provoke wonder. Here, in the shadow of the Andes, the walls of Ollantaytambo stand as a silent challenge to the modern mind. To understand the combination of skill, observation, labor, and vision that produced something simultaneously practical, monumental, and mysterious. How did the builders, armed only with basic tools and deep knowledge of their environment, achieve feats that even today seem nearly impossible? What knowledge, ingenuity, or cultural insight remains hidden in these stones, waiting for patient observation, careful study, and reflection to reveal its secrets? And perhaps most intriguingly, what does Ollantaytambo tell us about the extraordinary potential of human civilization, when ambition, skill, and vision converge in a landscape shaped both by nature and imagination? From the soaring walls and terraces of Ollantaytambo, where ancient hands shaped stone into monumental structures of precision, ingenuity, and enduring mystery, our journey moves to the windswept altiplano of southern Peru, high above Lake Umayo. Here, perched on rocky promontories that rise sharply from the surrounding plains, are the Sillustani burial towers, stone structures so perfectly cylindrical and so immaculately constructed that they seem almost to defy gravity. Known locally as chulpas, these towers are silent witnesses to a society whose reverence for ancestry, skill in masonry, and understanding of the high-altitude environment remains both fascinating and enigmatic. Standing among them, it is impossible not to feel the weight of centuries, the echo of lives long past, and the precision of human endeavor etched in stone. The first impression of Sillustani is its breathtaking integration with the landscape. The towers punctuate promontories overlooking the deep blue waters of Lake Umayo, their circular forms casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. Each chulpa is carefully constructed from massive stone blocks, cut, shaped, and stacked with such exacting precision that the walls appear almost seamless. Some rise over 12 meters in height, their tapering forms narrowing as they reach the sky. How did the builders achieve such vertical alignment on uneven bedrock, often atop craggy cliffs, without modern scaffolding, pulleys, or measurement tools? How did they quarry, transport, and assemble stones of such size with only rudimentary technology? And how did they ensure the stability of structures so exposed to wind, rain, and seismic tremors? Dating from the late pre-Columbian period, primarily between the 13th and 15th centuries CE, the Sillustani towers are generally attributed to the Kolla people, later incorporated into the Inca Empire. Yet their design, cylindrical, often smooth and tapering, differs significantly from other Andean burial traditions. Each tower served as a family tomb, holding the remains of nobility or elite members, and often included funerary offerings such as ceramics, textiles, and metal objects. These burials were not merely practical but symbolic, reflecting beliefs about ancestry, social hierarchy, and the afterlife. How did the Kolla conceive of death and memory? And how did these beliefs shape the architecture of stone in such a deliberate and monumental form? Were the towers intended to assert lineage and power, to connect the living with the spiritual realm, or to serve as markers of territorial and cultural identity? The engineering mastery is immediately evident in the precision of stone placement. Many cholpas exhibit polygonal masonry with each block cut to interlock perfectly with its neighbors. The tapering form, wider at the base and narrower at the top, distributes weight efficiently and enhances stability. This design allowed the towers to withstand earthquakes that are common in the region, demonstrating an understanding of structural forces that seems remarkably advanced for a pre-modern society. How was this knowledge acquired? Was it trial and error over generations, empirical observation passed down through craft traditions, or perhaps a combination of both? And why, despite the apparent simplicity of the cylindrical form, do these towers remain unparalleled in the Andes in their scale, precision, and endurance? Beyond engineering, the tower's placement is equally fascinating. Each cholpa is oriented according to a deliberate spatial logic. Some face east, capturing the sunrise over the lake. Others align with distant mountains or celestial markers, suggesting possible astronomical or ritual significance. Could these alignments have helped the Kolla track seasonal changes, agricultural cycles, or sacred events? Or were they intended to ensure that the dead were ritually oriented within the landscape, connected to both terrestrial and cosmic realms? The precision of orientation, combined with monumental scale, hints at knowledge, planning, and cultural priorities that continue to elude full comprehension. Inside the towers, archaeologists have discovered carefully arranged human remains and artifacts, indicating sophisticated funerary practice. Bones were often placed in seated positions, accompanied by offerings of cloth, pottery, or metal ornaments. Some towers contain multiple burials, layered across generations, revealing both familial continuity and the social importance of commemoration. How did these communities reconcile the spiritual, social, and technical demands of constructing each tomb? How much knowledge of preservation, ritual timing, and material durability was embedded in these designs, encoded in ways we can only partially infer from the archaeological record? The towers also invite speculation about their broader cultural and symbolic significance. Their monumental presence on the landscape asserts visibility and permanence, serving as enduring markers of social status, memory, and spiritual connection. Yet some features remain mysterious. Certain towers incorporate niches, openings, or ledges whose function is unclear. Were they practical, ceremonial, or symbolic? Could some have been designed to allow offerings or communication between the living and the ancestors, or to channel wind, light, or sound in ways now lost to time? And how much intentionality lies behind the size, placement, and orientation of each tower, suggesting a sophisticated integration of engineering, ritual, and social structure. Sillustani also raises questions about labor organization and resource mobilization. Quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing massive stone blocks required not only skill but coordination. Were these projects communal undertakings, mobilizing entire villages or specialized craft operations overseen by elite planners? How was knowledge transmitted, preserved, and standardized across generations to ensure consistency in form, alignment, and structural integrity? And how did these social and technical practices relate to the broader cultural and political networks of the Kola and Inca empires, who shared the highland environment yet expressed it in remarkably diverse architectural forms? Environmental adaptation is another striking element. The towers, perched on cliffs and promontories above Lake Umayo, are exposed to wind, rain, and dramatic temperature fluctuations. Yet their circular tapering forms, combined with precise stone fitting, allow them to endure these harsh conditions for centuries. Could the builders have understood principles of load distribution, thermal expansion, or erosion control, even in the absence of formalized engineering theory? Did the towers serve dual purposes, both symbolic and functional, providing a permanent memorial while harmonizing with the ecological and geological constraints of the highlands? Even more compelling is the aesthetic and sensory experience of Sillustani. From a distance, the towers punctuate the horizon, commanding attention across valleys and plains. Up close, the texture of stone, the careful interlocking of blocks, and the smooth taper of each tower convey both craftsmanship and intention. Walking among the towers, one senses the convergence of technical skill, cultural memory, and spiritual significance. How much of the site's design is meant to be seen, interpreted, or experienced, and how much remains hidden in subtle features, angles, gaps, or alignments, intended to communicate knowledge or meaning only to those initiated in its cultural logic. The Sillustani burial towers endure as a remarkable testament to human ingenuity, adaptability, and reverence for ancestry. Yet for all their solidity and permanence, they retain an aura of mystery. How did a pre-Columbian highland society without written records, mechanized tools, or modern engineering principles conceive, plan, and execute structures that endure so flawlessly? What knowledge of stonework, geometry, and environmental management was encoded in these towers, and how much of it remains beyond our capacity to fully comprehend or replicate? And perhaps most intriguingly, what beliefs, rituals, or cultural imperatives shaped their design, preserving social memory and spiritual connection across generations in ways that remain partially obscured to modern observers? Perched dramatically on the edge of the rugged cliffs of Inishmore, the largest of the Aran Islands off the western coast of Ireland, Dun Aengus stands as a silent testament to human ingenuity and the enduring allure of the unknown. From a distance, the stone fort appears almost to float above the Atlantic waves, a massive semicircular structure carved into the very earth, its walls following the natural contours of the land. The wind here is relentless, sweeping across the limestone landscape, carrying the salty scent of the sea, and whispering stories that have remained untold for thousands of years. To walk along the edge of the cliff and gaze down into the churning waters below is to feel both the majesty of nature and the enigmatic presence of a site that continues to defy full understanding. Dun Aengus is classified as a prehistoric hill fort, a designation that tells us much, but, ultimately, leaves more questions than answers. Archaeologists date its earliest constructions to the late Bronze Age, around 1100 to 800 BCE, yet the sheer scale and precision of its outer wall, built in a concentric horseshoe shape, suggests the involvement of a highly organized society capable of complex engineering. The main wall stretches some 5 meters thick in places, constructed from massive limestone blocks carefully fitted together without mortar. Inside, evidence of circular stone structures, possibly dwellings or storage spaces, adds another layer of complexity, hinting at a community that might have thrived here, seemingly isolated from the mainland, yet intimately connected to it through maritime trade and cultural exchange. Yet, the very positioning of Dun Aengus raises its first mysteries. Why construct a fort so close to the edge of a cliff that plunges hundreds of feet into the Atlantic? Was it simply a defensive measure, a way to guard against invaders? Or did the builders perceive some symbolic or spiritual significance in such a dramatic location? The prevailing theory suggests it functioned as a defensive stronghold, but the precision of its layout and the enormous labor required to move the stones seem to transcend purely practical concerns. How did a Bronze Age community transport and assemble these massive blocks on uneven terrain, especially considering the wind and weather conditions on the Aran Islands? Some have speculated the use of simple tools, levers, and sheer human effort. But even then, the question lingers. How could such a feat be accomplished with the limited technology of the time? As we examine the inner fortifications, another layer of intrigue emerges. The walls themselves are not uniform. Instead, they display an intentional curvature and alignment that some researchers argue may correspond with astronomical events. Could Dun Aengus have been more than a fort, perhaps a ceremonial site or observatory, aligned with the rising sun during solstices or with other celestial markers? The circular dwellings and central enclosures hint at communal or ritual activities, though the absence of written records or clear iconography leaves their purpose shrouded in speculation. Every stone, every wall, seems to whisper questions rather than offer answers, as though the fort itself resists interpretation. The geology of the site adds yet another layer of fascination. The limestone cliffs are riddled with natural fissures and caves, some of which may have been utilized for shelter or storage. Over millennia, erosion has shaped the land into jagged cliffs, wind-carved hollows, and dramatic overlooks. One cannot help but wonder, were the original builders aware of the long-term effects of weather and erosion? Or was the site's location chosen precisely because of its imposing visual impact, a deliberate statement of power, status, or spiritual connection? Some researchers suggest that such coastal fortifications may have served as markers of territorial control, visible from miles away, warning potential intruders of the presence of a sophisticated community. Others propose that the location was chosen for more mystical reasons, perhaps as a liminal space between the land and the sea, between the human and the divine. The questions deepen when we consider the broader context of Dun Aengus within Irish prehistory. The Aran Islands are dotted with megalithic sites, stone circles, and ancient enclosures, suggesting a culture that was deeply invested in stone construction, ritual practice, and communal organization. Yet Dun Aengus stands apart in scale and audacity. Its semicircular form, massive outer wall, and cliffside location are unparalleled in the region, making it difficult to compare with contemporary sites. How did this knowledge spread, and what inspired such an audacious project? Could there have been external influences, lost connections with now vanished civilizations, or knowledge passed down from previous generations whose origins we can only guess at? The fort's enduring presence raises as many questions about its creators as about the society that left it behind. Perhaps most compelling are the speculative theories that continue to surround Dun Aengus. Fringe researchers have pointed to the alignment of the fort with celestial events, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy that predates much of recorded history. Others propose that the site's remote and dramatic position indicates a spiritual or ritualistic purpose, a place where the boundary between the living and the supernatural was believed to be thin. While mainstream archaeology refrains from endorsing such interpretations, The sheer drama of the cliffs and the precision of the construction invite the imagination to wander, to consider possibilities beyond the practical. Visiting Dun Aengus today, one cannot escape a sense of awe mingled with perplexity. Standing within the inner enclosure, surrounded by stones that have weathered thousands of years of wind and salt, one can almost hear the echoes of lives lived here, the footsteps of those who hauled massive stones, the conversations, the daily rituals, the fears, and the aspirations. Yet the fort's silence is profound. Every corner, every curve of the wall seems to guard its secrets, offering glimpses of a past that is tantalizingly close yet perpetually just out of reach. Even modern technology has provided only partial insights. Excavations have revealed tools, pottery fragments, and remnants of hearths, yet these discoveries tell only a fraction of the story. How were the people organized? What social or religious structures guided their lives? Why did they invest so much effort into a site that appears impractical from a purely survivalist perspective? These questions linger because, despite centuries of study, the human element, the intentions, beliefs, and ingenuity of the builders, remains largely inaccessible. It is as if the fort itself preserves a fragment of consciousness from another age, a testament to both human achievement and the mystery that endures when records are absent. As the sun sets over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the fort and illuminating the cliffs with golden light, Dun Aengus stands as a monument to the unknown. Its walls hold stories that cannot be fully deciphered, a puzzle composed of stone, wind, and sea. Every visitor, scholar, or casual observer is left with the same lingering question: how and why did this remarkable structure come into being? And more importantly, what might still be hidden, waiting for someone, or something, to uncover its secrets? In contemplating Dun Aengus, we are reminded that history is not always linear or fully knowable. Some mysteries resist explanation, not because we lack intelligence or technology, but because they are embedded in the human experience itself, a blend of vision, labor, belief, and circumstance. Dun Aengus is not merely a fort. It is a challenge to the imagination, an invitation to wonder, and a symbol of the enduring enigma that is our prehistoric past. As we step back from its cliffside walls, the questions remain. Who were the architects of this astonishing site? What did they hope to achieve? And what truths lie forever beyond our grasp, etched in stone against the wind and the sea?